Good evening. I want to remind everyone that this is a formal city council meeting and following city ordinance chapter 23, the rules of decorum state that you need to put away all cell phones and electronic devices, please. Make sure they're turned off and put away, except for purposes explicitly authorized by state law, Texas Government Code, section 551.023. Okay, with that, I call this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, and indivisible. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, all council members are present, so we have a quorum. Proof of notice of meeting, City Secretary.
Thank you, Mayor. The notice of this meeting was posted by 2 p.m. on Friday, June 2nd.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, public comments.
First up, we have Oscar Cobos, Ward 5, commenting on several items.
Just be sure to introduce yourself,
Yep.
Mr. Cobos, and your
Yes, ma'am.
ward.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is Oscar Cobos, Ward 5, and everyone here today. Real quickly, just wanted to touch on a few items. First of all, on the issue of Skyway Gardens, I was here, been here for this issue, this development throughout for several years when it was first annexed. I know and believe what happened through that time and how a certain property was sold at $350,000 for, was it in order to get the annexation going? I know the particular individual, everything that went on. I hope there's progress in a good way, in a legal way as well today, because we dare not need another lawsuit and everything going on. I wanted to touch also right quick on the public comments. I want to thank Councilman Stevens for bringing this up. Such a grand opportunity to allow the people to speak. And even more, we have the right to know what's going on, to question everything that goes on at City Hall. This is for the community here. This is good. And I wanted to real quickly touch on the issue of employees. I saw there's so much of a understaffed. I wanted to see what's going on in that. I hope it gets explained very well tonight, what the budget is, what's going on. I'm sure you're doing a great job of that. And last, I wanted to touch real quickly on executive item concerning your attorney. We know and believe that there's been a pattern here for years, on and off, on and off. I'm going to ask that the city take into consideration everything that has happened. And I'm not asking, I'm just here to advocate for the community. I don't need a special resolution in the House as well. I just need, and the people need to know why your attorney is getting paid $10,000 a month for this and that. I hope you take this into consideration, that it is a time to ask for the resignation of your attorney once again. Thank you.
Any other public comments, City Secretary?
Next up, we have Karen Cantrell, Ward 1, commenting on the annexation for Skyway Garden.
Karen, just remember to state your name and ward.
My name is Karen Cantrell. I'm from Ward 1. And Honorable Council, Attorney, City Manager, City Secretary. You guys have Skyway Gardens on the agenda again, and here I am talking about Lechuguilla Road again. It was supposed to be paved in the first edition. Still not paved or brought up to city use, as it says. I suggest they do that first before they start the new edition. Driven down that road, you know just how bad it is. I'm sorry. I was trying to find a good adjective. So I hope the owners are listening. That road needs to be fixed so people in the first edition can get out and do their business. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. City Secretary?
Last up, we have Cynthia Salas, Ward 2, commenting on items 2 and 3.
Okay, Ms. Salas. Just remember to state your name and ward.
Cynthia Salas, Ward 2. I am going to talk about the public hearings in regards to public hearing number 2 with the permit for alcohol. TAB on 2 and 3. TABC actually does have a rule that alcohol cannot be sold within 300 feet of a school and or church. So I hope that there wasn't enough information in the packet. We don't have an address other than just store number. So just to keep in mind that that needs to be taken into consideration as well. And it's TABC section 109.33.
And that's it, City
That
Secretary?
concludes public comments.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion to move item number 3 of the information or discussion items to now. Mr. Knight cannot stay till his turn comes up in this section.
okay. I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, vote on it, please. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, all right. So Mr. Knight, would you like to come on up?
Folks, Nate. I used to teach at Sul Ross. I was a professor there. I've lived in Alpine since '82, on and off. Anyway, I've got some very important information here. I have 3 articles that were published in the past month, during the past month. And I'm just going to, I've highlighted certain quotes from these articles that I'm going to read, and that'll basically bring you a good understanding of what this concern is. So the first one is entitled FERC Commissioners. Now, FERC is the Federal Energy Reliability Commission. And the FERC commissioners tell senators, this is of course US senators, of major grid reliability challenges, with some blaming the markets. And this, so there's the first quote. The US grid faces major reliability challenges, according to members of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I'll just call it FERC from now on, who used the word 34 times in their prepared testimony. Thursday at a Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee hearing. And the next thing I'll read here, there is a looming reliability crisis in our electricity markets, FERC Commissioner James Danley said. By the way, there's supposed to be 5 commissioners, but for some reason, one of them is vacant. So there's 4 commissioners. And this has nothing to do with politics. There's 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. So I'll just continue on this. The next one was the United States is heading for a very catastrophic situation in terms of reliability, FERC Commissioner Mark Christie said. FERC Acting Chairman Willie Phillips said, we face unprecedented challenges to the reliability of our nation's electric system. Next one is growing reliability and resilience. Challenges from extreme weather and cyber or physical security threats require changes to the U.S. grid, according to FERC Commissioner Allison Clements. I don't know if I'm going to go over. Do I have a few minutes, or how many of these should I read?
It's an information discussion item. So this is open for the council to discuss.
Okay, but I've marked too many of these things here. Christie said the main problem is that power plants are being retired at a faster pace than they're being replaced. The arithmetic doesn't work. This problem is coming. It is coming quickly. Red lights are flashing. Large numbers of gas-fired power plants failed to run partly because they couldn't get fuel. That was during a storm a few months ago. Danley said the culprit is subsidized renewable energy, which he contends undermines the economics of coal-fired natural gas plants. Okay, let me find the the next one as quick as I can here. Capacity markets secure sufficient levels of capacity irrespective of subsidy levels, but cannot produce resources that governments prevent from being built or retained. You'll see here that the problem is that they're closing a lot of coal and gas-fired plants. And I'll leave it at that. Okay, there were approximately 10,000 energy projects in April designed to produce more than, I don't need to read all these details. I'll leave somebody with these copies. The problem is really a collective. Two bottlenecks are looming. More power is trying to squeeze into the inadequate grid, and coal-fired plants are being retired faster than new plants using renewable energy. Okay, the United States is heading for a reliability crisis. There's for Commissioner Christie again. I do not use the term crisis and melodrama because it is an accurate description of what we are facing. Now, the senators, I got a couple of quotes from senators here. Joe Manchin, Democrat, West Virginia, and John Barrasso, Republican from Wyoming. These are on the Energy Commission committee. Both identifying the same culprit as impending but unavoidable reliability crisis. Under the federal, okay, this is just too much. I've marked here. Thought I could read all this in 3 minutes.
Yeah, that's okay, Dr. Knight. You have time. So the point you're wanting to make to council is that we need to work on getting backup generators. What would you like council to do?
Yes, it's my suggestion. I hope I didn't leave out any real important comments here. I want to give a little bit of context to this. Okay, so they're saying in here, and if I could find the quotes, yeah, there was a really powerful quote there in one of them, that coming soon, the United States is going to see rolling brownout and blackouts, and some of them extended. And I should also say that, you know, we have these solar flares. We just had one like 2 weeks ago, and they give off these coronal mass ejections. And we've lucked out, you know, most of the time, the solar flare goes in some other direction than the earth. But if the sun happens to burn and we're right in the path of its ejecting, you know, millions of tons of solar material, that'll wipe out the whole grid for the whole earth. So that's another possibility. And that has happened once in history. Anyway, so I became concerned that if the power goes out, well, of course, we're gonna have problems with food. There'll be no fuel, no gasoline, and all this kind of stuff. Well, we can get by for a while with that. But if you don't have water to drink, in 3 days, you're dead. And so I checked to find out, and the city people I talked to who work with the water, they think that I was told they could really use 4 more generators. And Mr. Sandati and I kind of did a little rough thing in our head. I mean, we're probably looking at maybe $20,000 or something like that. I have no idea what the budget is or anything about the city, but it's the kind of thing like this is, it could happen, and we have senators, and I didn't even read all these quotes. I mean, everybody that's dealing with this in the federal government saying this is going to happen. And so we're not going to be able to get generators anywhere else. Now's the time to get them. Now, if it doesn't happen, people say, oh, we wasted this $20,000 or $30,000, whatever it is. I don't know what the city budget is. I have no idea. So then it's going to happen according to all these people. when we have severe weather, like if we have severe hot weather. Now, this year, here, we're supposed to be a little cooler than average, but about 2/3 of the country is gonna be hotter than average. And I just felt like as a backup, you know, to have these generators, if it doesn't happen this year, it may happen next year or the year after. I'll leave these articles with people, you know, and you can see for yourself what all these people are saying. But if we are able to keep the wells going, I think that's the #1 urgency.
Okay, can I interrupt you for just a moment?
Sure, I'm
The
done.
good news is that we're working on this. City manager, can you fill us in just a little bit on what we've been doing?
Yes, so actually, the city in April of 2022 went out for a feasibility study to understand not only our lift stations, our well fields, our pump stations throughout the city, and the backups. They came back with a proposed plan that is a phase plan that provides different sections of what we could cover. We were looking at anywhere from $500,000 to $990,000. So we accepted the feasibility study because we had phases and options. After that, our grant writer, Marcy Tuck, found a FEMA grant that actually allows us to purchase 5 well generators for the well fields. And so we applied for it. The council at the time dedicated months specifically to cover our matching portion. So we're not going to be questioning where the money's coming from. We are still in the running. FEMA does not operate to the level we would like. But we haven't been denied. We haven't been told we can't move forward with it. They have requested some follow-up information, then redacted it, and we'll come back to it again. So we're one of 2 in this area that are actually going for a generator-specific grant.
Thank you.
Two,
So it's us and Jeff Davis ISP.
okay. Well,
So we're actively working to ensure that we can support our water system. We did it in light of the storm in 2021. We were very fortunate to be able to rent backup generators from another city, from I believe Pecos. And so we never went down, we never had a boil notice. Water never stopped during that freeze.
okay, thank you very much. I'll leave these
Yes,
with you.
definitely.
Thank
We'll
you.
get copies to the council.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Knight, for coming and speaking.
Thank you. for
Thank you
having
very
Thank you.
much. Yes, thank you. Thank you for all your research. Okay, so we're moving to presentations, recognitions, and proclamation. So I do want to take a moment and recognize someone who has dedicated a lot of time to the city. January 6, 2016, she was appointed to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So Eileen, would you come on up? All right, so Eileen has 7+ years that she donated to the city, working on the zoning and planning. And we appreciate that. We know you're paid so highly to do that. But we do, we appreciate your service. So in honor of that, I have a certificate of honor and recognition hereby presented to Eileen Ford on the 6th day of June, 2023, for her 7 years of service to the city of Alpine Planning and Zoning. Okay, so we're going to move on to reports. The city mayor report. It looks lengthy, but it's really very quick. I just wanted to give updates from recent meetings that I've attended. The Alpine Housing Authority is working hard and they are doing a fabulous job. So I attend those board meetings. The Alpine Business Association, we have some members here tonight and the president of the association. And we're also working hard to see what we can do in regards to economic development. The Alpine Community Projects Group, We have completed and analyzed the phase 2 market study, and we invited the public to come and hear for the greenhouse nursing home project that we're working on. So now we're moving towards getting a financial analysis done. So that's on track. The Alpine Historic Association, they're helping the Holland Hotel and the Maverick to receive historic designation. And so that's exciting. Okay, so moving from the organizations, we had a water leak, one of our mains at Harriet in June Street over in the Carpenter Edition, and that was taken care of. We had to open up the fire hydrants just because the pressure was so high that it could have actually probably taken somebody's hand off. So that has been repaired, but we're still looking at water leaks. We're looking at our infrastructure, wastewater and water. And we had a budget meeting. It was like a town hall budget meeting on June 1st. We have upcoming dates. We have one on Thursday. We would love for everybody to attend at 3 o'clock. So the one on June 1st was where we were looking at the strategic plan mandates that we received from the citizens. The strategic plan town halls were all last fall. You guys may have remembered that we had them from October all the way through December. And the mandates that we received from the residents who attended those are to look at our wastewater and get it repaired, our water infrastructure, streets, and also to look at retaining employees and what we can do to attract employees. Those were the top 3 things that the residents who attended those said that they want us to work on. So that's our mandate as a council. And then we also looked at the capital improvement plan at that last budget meeting. It is on our YouTube station, our YouTube channel. You just go to YouTube, type in City of Alpine, and you can view that budget workshop. We're also working still towards partnerships, and the one we have developed with the county is a great one. Megan, the city manager, and I meet regularly with the judge, and we've been working together. And so that's coming along quite well. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to the city attorney.
City attorney update, have municipal court again on Thursday. The new process is put in by the municipal judge. Are working well. We're moving all the cases. Most of the people that show up are resolving their cases by pleas and paying the fine. In fact, we're keeping the court going promptly, making people start paying attention to their tickets. On May 26th, Megan and the mayor and I met with the team from Skyway Gardens, and we went over matters that's going to be discussed later in the meeting. The matter that was discussed is we had submitted to Skyway Gardens the city's proposed comments or additions to the development agreement. And Skyway Gardens was saying, well, why do you have that? Megan and I replied that we want everything in the development agreement that complies with the city ordinances for annexation. So we noted in the proposed development agreement all of the ordinances so that Skyway Gardens team could see where the requests from the city were as far as what we were asking for. And they've replied back to us. They still have some issues with that, but they still requested some changes. And so that'll be up to the council to decide what y'all want to do as far as the final version of the proposed development agreement. But the proposed additions that we had put in it were reflective of the current city ordinances regarding annexation, what has to be done for utilities, etc. You have on the action item later today the Darty well MOU. Y'all had asked me to discuss the Darty well in executive session a couple of meetings ago to move forward on that. Discussions and reviews of the rules with the TCEQ and then talking with the TCEQ in El Paso. The city can't get permission to tie a well into the city system unless the city has some kind of prove some kind of legal right or future legal right to be able to have the well. So I created the MOU so that the city could show the TCEQ that we're discussing matters with the Doherty family and that if things went through, we would have the legal right to use the well. And, there's no news in the Colgate lawsuit. We're waiting. The lawyers from TML have moved to have that dismissed. We're waiting for replies from the judge on that. And finally, the issue come up a while back on the sale of surplus city streets. There was one family that wanted a small piece of the street on Brown Street. And I've submitted a proposed ordinance on that to Megan. So the council will know what that boils down to. Normally, cities can't give away property, have to put it out for bids. Looking at small pieces like that, it's a lot easier not to have to do that. Cities can also abandon city streets, and if they abandon it, it can be donated or given to the adjacent property owners. My suggested way of dealing with that is to have the property owner that wants to take the property, have it appraised, and then pay the city what the fair market value of it is, which would be pretty much a nominal amount because it's always going to be a small slice. But it's going to keep the city from having to be faced with people saying, well, you're giving somebody away too much property. And so if you give away a little piece of the street to somebody that might not mean much, but the next person may want half of the street or a bigger piece of the street. So that you're going to end up getting into a point where it should have gone out for bid or for appraisal and sale. And so some cities have done the kind of process that I suggest, which is where everybody just buys it. You know, I think the cost of that Brown Street would be probably $1,000. It's not like the city's going to get a lot of money from it, but it keeps a sort of level playing field for it. But once again, that's going to be a decision that y'all need to make on how you want to deal with these issues in the future. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions, discussion?
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. All right, city manager.
Okay, just a few updates. So wanted to keep the public and the council informed on the Pueblo Nuevo Park. We held 2 public hearings at the actual park, one April 26th and one May 18th, to get the input of the residents in that area on what type of playground equipment they would like to see. At the first meeting, there was a lot of discussion on, well, what can we afford? Can we get it covered? We really want slides. We really want swings. We want the one that throws the kids off, the merry-go-round. I'm already thrown off. They weren't really particular with color. They just wanted more for their money kind of concept. So what we did, and I say we as in Marcy, Marcy took everyone's suggestions, went back, did a lot of research to pull packages together. So she put packages together that kind of put what everyone had been asking for, and then you had your most expensive packet, and then you had your more affordable. Some included swings, some didn't. You had the merry-go-round. And so on May 18th, we went back out to the park. Thank God it didn't rain. And we had them kind of vote. Which one do you like? Which packet would you want us to start working towards? And so they all decided. It's kind of a compromise of a smaller one-piece set with a swing and a merry-go-round in addition to. And now Marcy is working back with vendors to purchase all of these. She is trying to go through purchasing co-ops. That does help with our procurement process. We not only have to follow state guidelines on this project because this is a partially funded federal grant, we also have to follow all of the federal guidelines as well. So it's a little bit more step-by-step, making sure we cover everything. Council graciously approved Big Bend Concrete as the vendor to provide our concrete work. We've been working with Big Bend Concrete Kincaid to get a meeting put together so we can start discussing and negotiating what ideally do we want and what will it cost us within that bid packet. So we want to keep the money to what was in the bid, but ultimately come back to council with a formal contract that says this is what we're doing. We tentatively had it scheduled yesterday, but Mr. Kincaid called and then informed us he wouldn't be here. So we've rescheduled it for this Friday, June 9th. So hopefully we can all sit down. Our public works team has been working with him to get everyone's schedule so we can discuss this. Just so everyone's aware, this deadline is September of 2025. So the park has to be completed by September of 2025. We're not worried of it not being completed, but I say that now and then in September and we go, oh, we have to extend it. So just getting it out there. One of the other big projects that's going on with the city is the airport lighting project. They are currently running the wiring, which is great. They've been working with the city on closing the taxiways to minimize the impact. Instead of the foreseeance of having it closed for multiple days, multiple weeks at a time, they've been trying to schedule for 8 hours here, 15 hours here. And they've also been compromising to let the emergency flights come in and out a little bit easier than them having to go other places. So our contractor has been very easy to work with, really. We do not have an estimated date or time on the next closure. I know Abel works with them constantly. He talks to Keith probably on a daily basis, who is the project coordinator for the contractor. We did have an issue with the radio key up of the lights at night. Flights coming in weren't able to turn the runway lights on. We had a fuse go out and that we were not able to immediately replace. So the contractors assisted us with temporarily placing the lights on photocells, which means the lights come on at night and then they go off in the morning. So they helped us for the temporary fix so that we could get the fuses. We are going old and new systems, so it's pulling the parts to get it to work. So once again, contractors have really been helping us. We do anticipate that this project, fingers crossed, will be completed before the actual deadline of July 10th. So it is coming to an end. We are excited to have a newer system in place. And hopefully moving forward, we'll get to finish the project with assistance from TxDOT for the rest of the lighting system. The gas rectifier, I wanted to bring this back up to the council and the public. Council approved an emergency procurement for public health and safety in light of the gas rectifier on Running Buck. Or
Fighting Buck.
Fighting Buck.
Same thing.
Come all together. On Fighting Buck, it had been being monitored for about 2 years. Railroad Commission did come in and recommend that we replace it sooner than later. Over the past couple of months, the gas department has had to fill the system with water to keep it there, all these little things that they do. And it just became more and more of a concern. If it goes out, we lose that protection in that area. So we had the ordinance approved. We've initiated the project with Lone Star, and that's the company we're utilizing. They came in with one of the lowest bids. We've already paid our down payment to get basically our name on the list to get completed. They are finishing a current project and will start on us next. So we're looking at them starting this month. So you'll see some construction going on. It's very minimal on Fighting Buck. They basically come in, they'll pull out with a little silver box, and then they'll of course replace and update all that. Another big project that's been discussed and been on our list is the hot non-payments. Initially, when this first came up last year, it was a courtesy call, courtesy comment, courtesy follow-up with hoteliers and STRs that weren't in compliance. 22 letters went out on May 8th, 2023. We have actually had several responses, which has been great. Some of them have been, hey, we're paying, which has helped us to clean up our side, verifying that the payments have actually been received. We've actually had several returned by the post office, which tells us we need to make sure we have correct and accurate mailing addresses. And also Heather Yaden has been assisting with the search of STRs online. So she's taken some of her time, and what she's done is she's gone through and found all the ones that don't match our current list. And she's provided that information to Geo, so that allows him to provide the notifications and friendly reminder that we need to register, and then the collection of the hot occupants tax. So the other side of this is when I actually asked Cindy to help us kind of, here's the list of hoteliers and STRs that we have in our accounting system. She went through and started comparing it to the master list that they have. And then we were able to go through and say, oh, well, these aren't in business anymore. So when we print out our report, we show that we have all these STRs with the zero balances. It allowed us to go through and start cleaning them up so that not everyone's like, well, they're not paying, they're not paying. Well, no, it's not, they're not paying, they're no longer in business. So that was a great assistance on her part. And the next item, legislative update. So round one is over. This has been an ongoing and learning experience. Just so council is reminded, I will be attending a TML legislative update next week in Georgetown. This will be a one-on-one conference to allow me to ask questions and to follow up on things that may or may not impact the city. What do we need to do as a city to move forward and be prepared for some of these changes? For anyone who has not been following our legislation, there were 8,340 bills and resolutions filed by the House and Senate. So several of the big ones that have been of interest in the past discussions I've had with council include Senate Bill 369. This is the de-annexation or disannexation. Automatically at the end of the year, if we don't provide all of the services, including utilities. It was amended to include that they would have to petition to be de-annexed. It actually did not reach the House vote. And of course, legislation has gone on recess. Another one that was of huge interest. This one, I kind of love the term that TML and the state has taken with this one from our level is this is the Texas Death Star. This is House Bill 2127. This is a bill a regulatory act that preempts cities and counties from adopting or enforcing an ordinance or rule that regulates conduct in a field of regulation that is occupied by the provision of Agriculture Code, Business and Commerce Code, Finance Code, Insurance Code, Labor Code, Natural Resource Code, Occupation Code, and Property. So any state law that is in these codes, we cannot be stricter. We have to follow pretty much identical to, which means we get the pleasure of going back through all of our ordinances and trying to match or find where we may fall into some of these categories to make sure we're not in non-compliance. The fun part of this is we have no idea how this is actually going to play out until a city gets sued. So when a company, a resident, or someone actually sues a city, because this law now allows them, we no longer have immunity for it, then the case law will actually determine how the state will move forward with each of these. So in my little group of fellow city managers and local employees, we kind of have this which city gets sued first bet going on. Top of the list is San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, but we'll have to wait and see. The next one of interest.
Wait a minute, Megan. So going back to the
I
Death
still don't even
Star.
understand the whole thing, so don't ask her to repeat.
Okay, so it passed.
So yes, but there is, and at the very last, I have one little statement. I have it memorized, but I'll just say it. June 18th is the last day for the governor to veto. So after June 18th, there's no, it's 100% pass. The governor has till then to veto this.
Is there any indication that he's looking at this?
No,
Because how many bills are on his desk?
more than I probably can imagine. I don't know how many currently, well, all of them actually, besides the resolutions.
So-
This bill was supported by the Republican leadership in both houses.
So
Take
this
away
can have a
city
huge
powers.
impact on us. We just don't know what. We would have to sit down and start ordinance to ordinance to verify. Or get sued.
Okay, so we need a 27-hour day.
Did you do that?
So the next item is Senate Bill 1526. And the reason why I wanted to keep on top of this one is this is the mobile emergency services for Big Bend Regional Hospital District. This would allow them to be able to actually implement and monitor or use, take action on mobile emergency services. It is still pending and legislation is in recess. They have actually scheduled for another round of legislative updates, so hopefully it will go all the way.
What was the bill?
This one is Senate Bill 1526. So this one, like I said, I wanted to pay attention to because it's in support of Big Bend Regional Hospital District to manage mobile emergency unit services. This would be EMS. This one passed. This one I thought that I'd bring to the council's attention only because we did just update our ordinances. House Bill 2063 is now requiring informed consent before a dog or cat may be boarded or kenneled and left unattended. So this one is important. Our actual animal advisory board does stay on top of these, which is why we did make some changes to the ordinance. This one did pass. So this means as a kennel operator, I have to have approval before I can actually take your animal and leave them unattended. Otherwise, there has to be 24/7 someone there. Another item that has passed is Senate Bill 1716. This one is in regards to term limits for certain contracts regarding airports and associated air navigation facilities operated by or owned on behalf of a local government. Obviously, I want to be in the know of what's going on. This one specifically set the term change from 40 to 50 years. So certain leases and contracts now may have a 50-year term. It also regulated the abilities on renewing. So you couldn't have multiple renewals of 50-50-50. So it does set some terms on that.
So we don't have any navigation equipment we're responsible
Currently, no.
for. DB and the RNAV and all that.
So it's associated with the leases though. It's the other side of it.
Yep.
The other one passed. This one actually is various, and I just want you guys to know that Chief Lasoya does a wonderful job of hosting legislative update meetings and invites all of the agency law enforcements from the county, all the region. There were several that were passed that I wanted to bring to everyone's attention, including updated and changing the active shooter required training. It does specifically list how many hours they are going to be required to have. Mental health training, also domestic violence notice to victims, they've updated that. Additional training for dealing with individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia. So these were some of the top of the list when it comes to our law enforcement and updating their training requirements. These all have passed. Chief Lasoya, I'm pretty sure will hold a meeting here soon. He does have organizations that help him with that to make sure that they stay on top of that for our law enforcement team. Another one that passed was Senate Bill 1420. This is the municipal and county hotel occupancy tax. So this one, they went in and they defined tourists to include business travelers. They added the addition of a multi-use facility, defining a facility that has a purpose with the majority of the events attracting tourists. So it adds another level of visitor center. You can now have a multi-use facility. You can have an event center. So they've added another term. The big aspect of this that I wanted to keep on top of, it does change the annual report requirements. For those of you who don't know, the city is required to report annually the amount of money we receive from tourism, and then we have to break it down into what we spend in each of the categories. Alpine is the only city in the state of Texas that is required to spend 51% for advertising. So when I do this report, it's always wonderful when I see that 51%, actually higher sometimes, hit that one designated line. They've extended the deadline from February 20th to March 1st. They've also added an additional item. I kind of want to say the state got smart. We were only required to report what we received. Now we have to not only report what we've received, but what we've unexpended revenue, like what we have in reserves. What are we holding on to? It also allows for cities and counties to allocate up to $1,000 to cover the cost to submit the report. So if we were to hire a company that actually would do this report as they make it, you know, a little bit more detailed, a little bit more structured, we could pay them $1,000 out of the hot fund specifically to cover it. It also, and this one what I found interesting, it clarified the use of funds to include hot funds cannot be used to acquire, construct, and improve, plus like 30 other things, any part of a building not primarily used to distribute tourist information. So we don't get a new city hall with it. But they did definitely clarify all that. This one, Counselor Rodriguez, at the last meeting, you made a comment about certifications and if we could hire someone that didn't have their high school diploma or GED. So this one, I kind of had my fingers crossed, had been monitoring it, but wanted to make sure. House Bill 1845, licensing requirements for certain operators of water and wastewater systems. Now, the commission, which TCQ, is required for Class D only, and this is the first level of the certification, to establish a provisional certification program for individuals who do not possess a high school diploma or equivalent. So individuals we hire who have those will have to complete all the required training, pass the required tests, and then have to work under a license holder. So this is a huge step for us because we can open up that field a little bit more, but then at the same time, we can encourage them to get their GEDs or pass their diplomas and stuff like that to move up. So really exciting that one went through. Another one was Senate Bill 1145. This is the local option exemption from ad valorem taxation by county or municipalities of all or part of appraised value of real property used to operate childcare facility. So this one I monitored because we've been discussing the need for childcare. And we've all been talking about, well, how can we help? What can we do? There's always been the comments of, tax abatements and incentives. Well, this one did pass. It does have specific requirements in order to do it. The facility must be a state licensed facility. So this can't be a home daycare unless it is actually licensed by the state. There are additional qualifications per participant, including such items as participating in the Texas Workforce Program. They do have a whole childcare program available. 20% of enrollees receive subsidized services, and then there are several others. Local exemption cannot be less than 50%. So the city can pass an ordinance that would regulate and allow for this additional exemption for childcare facilities. This could be an item that we could utilize to encourage people. The city would have to actually put it in place though, and present it to the appraisal district. They won't just go in and do it. Another one is House Bill 1801. This is a requirement that each appraisal district periodically confirm recipients of the residents' homestead exemption actually qualify for these exemptions. So this will require the appraiser to develop a program for review once every 5 years. So as we talk about short-term rentals and we talk about property owners and property taxes, this one has passed that would require people who have that exemption to verify their exemption. I can't tell you how Brewster County will manage this and how the appraiser will verify, but I did think this is something of importance because these are items that we've been talking about.
Darryl will figure it out.
Get back to us, Daryl.
One of the last ones I had on here, I'm gonna say I was a little bit selfish when I was following this one. This is House Bill 2464. This is the optional annuity increase for certain retirees and beneficiaries of the Texas Municipal Retirement System. The reason why I find this one to be important is as we've talked about employees and long-term and retention and the benefits and what do we offer them to stay, and when they retire, what do we offer them? This allows for the cost of living adjustment to be non-retroactive. So prior, if we were to pass a cost of living adjustment, it would go back to the date of their retirement, and that would be a huge expense to cover. And so this is a bill that was passed that really does benefit both sides. It encourages city to provide those cost of living adjustments, as well as providing those extra benefits to the retirees. This is not required to be adopted by cities. This is giving us the option. I have reached out to TMRS and set some time up to visit with them to see how it will basically benefit Alpine and the impact it will have. So this would impact our rate that we actually are pulling from our employer side of our employees. So the employees currently contribute 5%, and then we contribute a portion based on where our levels are at. We are fully funded. We didn't have to make up for being behind. We have currently about a 1.9% employer rate that we pull every month. If you haven't heard discussions, the county is about 10%. So we've done really well to fund our retirement system for now and the future. So those are just some of the bills. As I mentioned, I will be going to an update in person so that we can kind of iron out all of the other ones. Some of the ones are, yes, you can have 6 chickens in your yard now. They had several odd ones, but they all passed. I did try to pay attention to ones that were specific to topics that we've talked about, but as they were going through the process, I know Gio looked at some of the election ones. They started amending them and targeting specific areas of Texas or specific cities. And so where we thought we might have a good bill passed, we were automatically eliminated from because they added, have to be within 100 miles of the Guadalupe River. They do that as they go through the process. We missed out on some of them. So I will have more updates moving forward on where we're at. Most of these do take effect September 1st. So we will be prepared. The last item on my report is the city manager expectations. I wanted to make sure that I provide you regular updates with this. There were several expectations set out for me at my evaluation. And the first one, of course, was the new software system for the city. During the budget workshop, I had discussed this in the direction we're going. So we are working out and to complete the enterprise resource planning, the ERP, which outlines all of our software needs, what we have and what we want for every single department, for everything we could possibly think of. It's anticipated to be issued by the end of this fiscal year. My goal is to have it issued by the end of July. This is just the first step to get who wants to come here. Who's even interested in servicing Alpine? Some of the concerns we have with our software is customer service. Because we are rural and we're out in the middle of West Texas, having someone here is very beneficial. Sometimes just a face-to-face training is preferred over the online. So that's one thing we are going to take into consideration. It will also allow for what fields of software available. Maybe a company will offer the accounting, the utility, and the animal control, but they have nothing to do with airport and building permits. So we want to make sure whoever we select has that very broad availability. Of course, in response to Councilor Nance's comment about, being able to phase, do we pull the carpet out all at once? That's in there as well, if we can phase it out. The accessibility to other software groups. We do have some specific softwares. Law enforcement utilizes COPSI. And is there an interface? That was the word I was looking for last time. Is there an interface to put the two together so that we're not truly operating 2 separate systems? One of the other items of consideration is we want to be able to print reports into different formats. I manually do all the Excel spreadsheets because the accounting software doesn't always transfer over cleanly into Excel. And so it would be nice if I could just hit Excel and it automatically puts it in Excel instead of having to go from PDF to Excel and then clean up the Excel because it didn't transfer over right. So those are exciting things. We had a resident inquire about the licensing. So we've added to make sure we have that structure in there as well and the type of licensing so that we make sure we can address everything. The other item was to develop an employee retention plan. So I actually have been working with the SHRM, which is the Society of Human Resource Management. It's a nationally recognized organization for human resources. They have a wealth of what they call toolkits and resources. So I've attended several of their little webinars in regards to retention and try to get an idea of the directions that other cities are going. Paycor, another organization, also offers a lot of these trainings as well. So some of the things that they've brought up in regards to employee retention, basically they looked at the job satisfaction. The 5 leading factors that they bring up is, and this one I thought was interesting, was the first one, is respectful treatment of all employees at all levels. So I felt wonderful to hear that. Second for them is compensation and salary, trust between employees and senior management, job security, and opportunities to use skills and abilities at work. One of the things that we've talked about a lot is growth plans. We initiated a growth plan this fiscal year. And 90% of our employees and directors, the first thing for the first year is training. It's to allow that growth, to get them the skills to move up in their positions. Some of the strategies in another conversation and webinar involved different levels to look at: personalized employee support, effective employee onboarding. We have been trying to change our onboarding to take a different perspective with it. I had the pleasure of speaking with one of the city managers in Arizona. Can't remember his name. Brief conversation. Their onboarding is 4 days. And they literally go through everything. And the very first thing he mentioned was they go through their core values. Because you want your employees to match your core values. So one of my employee things that I have in our strategic plan is to develop a set of core values. The city of Alpine does not have formal core values, and I think it's important that we put those in place. Other items were mentorship programs, competitive compensation, but not as high up. This one is a real to life example, life-work balance. And when I wrote it down initially, I wrote it down work-life balance. And I've had an employee not want to move up because he wants to ensure his life-work balance. He wants that balance and the flexibility of a schedule. Another item is encouragement, recognition, and teamwork. And how are we focusing on those, and how are we implementing them, and what are we doing? This fiscal year, I have implemented, with all help of the whole entire team, is we recognize all the national recognitions. And that's why you get all those proclamations, is because we took the core national recognitions: National Public Service Recognition Week, National Aviation Day. He doesn't get a week. But we looked at all of those to start bringing that up to our employees. Communication, employees want to be heard. They want to be part of the process. And this one was kind of a combination. It was mentioned in a lot of the strategies, is mental health and wellness programs. So I do give Gio some credit here. He reached out and got some information from the employees, and how can we get everyone a gym membership, and if the city can't pay for it, can we get a discount? So Alpine Fitness is offering a discount for employees of the city of Alpine so that we can encourage them to go to the gym. I believe you had 17, say 30. So we have employees who want to do it. So this was exciting. One of the items I had actually reached out in last year was employee engagement survey. Sending out a survey to see where our employees are at. This one was fun because they came back with, well, it's 2,500 to 3,500 without any customs. That's a base pay for 33 questions. They do it anonymously. A lot of it's done by email. Well, we know that not all of our employees have emails. So that makes it a little hard to get the whole city involved. And we've recently found out that when we send them emails to take required mandated state training, you have to really stay on top of them. And so I'm still working out the kinks on that to possibly move forward with it. We do have, I have several employee surveys that I printed out that we could use, but then it's it's encouraging them to fill them out. This would be no names, we don't want to know who you are. We just want to know what you think, kind of deal. So that's where I'm at with that one. The last one is updating the city charter. So I've had the pleasure of visiting with multiple cities who in November of 2022 amended their charters. It is a process. The first step will require the creation and appointment of a charter commission. And so this one is very across the board. City of Fort Stockton had 15 people on their commission. They just did theirs in November of 2022. Rowlett had 8 people on their commission. So the number of people kind of varies from city to city. So we would have to actually formally create this board and put people on it just to protect the city. The other item of discussion was what are you trying to change? What do you want to see? So having that list and priorities of what we want to see, I would recommend that we get a few town halls, public hearings put together. Like we did with the strategic plan, is what do we want to change? I know that I want to change things that are in conflict with the state law. We do have several items that the state no longer allows us to do, like annex, involuntarily. We can't just annex a property. It has to actually be petitioned to be annexed. So cleaning up that kind of thing. I would love for the city to look at actually changing the term limits of our council members. I think the first year you're learning, the second year you're campaigning, and then we're praying you stay. When you have the changeover, it makes it really hard as a small community for us to continue to move forward with all of our projects. I think it's important that you've invested your time, that you get to see the end result. I say that because the timeline for this is very strict. It does have to go for voter approval. And it's typically during, and I've not seen it anywhere else or found any legal guidance on it that says it can be done any other time, but the general election in November. So I don't foresee us having this ready for November of 23. We would have to wait till November of 24. And so that's where I
You
think
could incorporate it when the election comes around next May.
it has to be out
Has
for,
to be in
yeah.
November.
As of right now, that's what I have out. One of the things that I've noticed in a lot of the other home rule charters is they add an actual section that already has established the commission. And so it just says that it will be filled by X amount of people, and then that the charter will be reviewed every 2 years or every 4 years. It really was dependent on the terms of their council people. I noticed that it kind of didn't go hand in hand. So if they had an election, the charter was the following year. But it was kind of nice to already have that established so that you weren't constantly having to reorganize a commission. You've already formulated it in your charter. Term limits were a big thing in this go round. Actually, that was actually the biggest thing. And then a lot of cities were removing where it conflicted with state law.
And I mentioned, just so that everybody knows, the Home Rule Charter was adopted May 1st, 1993. And it was amended May 1995. And then once again, May 7th, 2005. So we are way behind the curve on looking at this and making sure it's up to date.
And I know the city of Rowlett did specifically say that they would review their charter every 2 years. Doesn't mean they would amend it every 2 years, but they already had the process in place so that as state laws change and councils and the needs of the community, they could easily do it. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's all.
All right, Councilmember Stevens.
Send us your expectations to their.
Yes, they're in the minutes, so I will forward those to you. That's okay. Well, they're in the minutes. Those are.
The expectations are public.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, comments? All right, thank you. So there are no city staff updates, and we are at the hour mark. We're going to take a 5-minute break before we go to public hearings. Oh,
baseball field.
all right, are we ready? Okay, call the meeting back to order. Please remember the rules of a formal city council meeting. Please keep conversations to a bare minimum. If you do need to talk to someone, please step outside so that it doesn't distract anybody around you. Please place cell phones away except as allowed by section 551.023 of the Texas Government Code. All right, there were no city staff updates, so we're moving to public hearings. Let me remind everyone in the audience that council can't comment if you come up to speak on a public hearing. Okay, so public hearing to obtain citizen views and comments regarding the first reading of ordinance 2023-05-01, an ordinance annexing the proposed Skyway Gardens 2 development that is adjacent and contiguous territory to the city legally described at 5.000 acres out of section 102, block 9, Brewster County, Texas, being a portion of the certain 10-acre tract described in volume 314, page 453, official public record of Brewster County, Texas. And I believe the action item, this is going to end up being an action item. The address is on that action item further in the packet. All right, do we have any public comments? Okay, seeing none, we're moving on. Public hearing number 2, public hearing to obtain citizen views and comments regarding special use permit 2023-06-01 for the purpose of allowing the applicant GPM Southeast LLC DBA Uncles number 6390 to obtain an alcohol license permit from the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission to operate a convenience store with alcohol sales. Do we have anyone here for that public hearing? Okay, please come up, state your name and ward. And that address should also be on the action item.
Okay, Cynthia Salas, Ward 2. I spoke earlier on behalf of these 2 items. My apologies. I did not realize that the address was on the action item. I assumed that it would be in the public hearing as well.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak on the action or public hearing number 2? All right, seeing none, we're moving on. Public hearing number 3 to obtain citizen views and comments regarding special use permit 2023-06-02 for the purpose of allowing the applicant GPM Southeast LLC DBA Uncles number 6410 to obtain an alcohol license permit from the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission to operate a convenience store with alcohol sales. Anyone here to speak on that item? Okay, seeing none, we're moving on. Public hearing number 4 to obtain citizen views and comments regarding short-term rental special use permit 2023-06-03 for a property located at 610 North Phelps Street. Anyone here to speak on this item? Okay, Karen Cantrell. Once again, please state your name and ward. It's old hat for you.
Karen Cantrell, Ward 1. I just have a question. When is enough? Short-term rentals? I mean, I know that we have to take them. Is there like a limit? Because I mean, you can't swing something or anything without hitting the short-term rental these days. It's like, I live right next to one. And mostly it's just quiet old people, but they could rent to some, they could rent to some lively renters someday, you know? I just want to know, when is enough? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. City Secretary.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight's consent agenda has 5 items. Item 1, approval of May 16, 2023 regular meeting minutes. Item 2, approval of Richard Portillo to the place 1 position on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Item 3, approval of Herman Acosta to the place 5 position on the Parks and Recreation Board. Item 4, approval of special use permit 2023-06-03, the short-term rental special use permit for a property located at 610 North Phelps Street. The record property owners are Alex Fleming, Charles Fleming, and Cheryl Fleming. Property ID of the subject property is 38714. And item number 5 is approval of April 2023 city attorney invoice.
Mayor, I'd like to pull out number 5, the approval of the April 2023 city attorney invoice, please, ma'am.
Okay,
And I'd like to pull out number 3, approval of Harmon Acosta to place 5 position.
okay. So we're pulling out items number 3 and 5 from the consent agenda. City Secretary to consider them separately. We're going to consider items 1, 2, and 4 as one unit. I need a motion for items 1, 2, and 4.
I'll make a motion to approve those 24.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Okay. All right, I need a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, the vote is unanimous. All city council members voting. So items 1, 2, and 4 have been approved. In its regular position, we are going to consider item 3 separately. Councilmember Stokes.
I wouldn't have pulled this out, but I had 4 phone calls Monday morning. Wondering if it wasn't a conflict of interest for Mr. Stevens to be in business with Mr. Acosta and put him on a board. I don't, and I told him I don't know. I said, I know I have just taken an ethics training. And it says, there may not be anything, but if it implies you're in business with them, that maybe you should think about not doing it. We just had those tests. So that's my only question.
So I'm not in business with him. I'm in his business with his father.
Okay.
Okay. And he's a member of Ward 5. I believe he's a candidate for brings good value. I thought it worthwhile to nominate him going forward.
Well, I don't know the man. Never have met him.
He's here.
So I just know I had, my phone started blowing up yesterday morning and I said, I'll pull it out and ask.
Yeah.
If y'all feel it's conflict of interest, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'd like to add that I personally spoke to Mr. Acosta before he even spoke to Rick about coming on. He's willing and eager to do this. He wants to get involved. He has the desire, and I think that's what we need, the desire to want to make a change. And I think he does have that.
I agree.
Okay, Councilmember Sandate,
Approve.
Councilmember Nance. Okay, so I need a motion for item number 3, approval of Herman Acosta to the place 5 position.
So moved.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Okay, let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, it passes unanimously with all council members voting. Okay, now we're coming up on item number 5, which was pulled. So Councilmember Rodriguez.
As with the previous bill of March 2023, just a history, the city attorney had not been asked to look into any information on the Daughtery well. He had been asked to provide a memorandum of understanding, and that was all that he was asked to do by the city manager. It was discussed previous times, numerous times after that, letting him know that he was not to conduct any other business that was not asked of by either council or the city manager. So I am asking to pull the charge for 4-4, the amount of 180. A charge on 4-5, the amount of 160. Charge on 417 in the amount of 160. 419 in the amount of 200. And 426 in the amount of 120 for a total of 820. That being said, I move that we approve it with the changes, taking 820 off the invoice.
Can you repeat the
dates?
for-
the
I'd
amount
like to discuss those.
Okay, one moment. We have to have a motion. Go ahead.
The dates?
I found it. You got, yeah, just want to make sure I wrote it down correct.
Okay. All right, so I need a motion before we can discuss. Will you move? I need a second, actually.
Discuss.
Okay. All right, so discussion, city attorney.
Please tell me the ones that you didn't want to pay, Councilor Rodriguez.
Once again, it's the one on 4-4, the amount of 180. 4-5, the amount of 160. 417 in the amount of 160. 419 in the amount of 200. And 426 in the amount of 120.
What was the
And
last
you
one?
didn't want, you don't want to pay your attorney for finding the correct information that's needed in order to have a memorandum of understanding with the Daughtys so that the city can move forward to see if we can use the well. That's what this work was done. work was done to be, to find out what the TCEQ requirements were for adding a well to this municipal well called a public water supply. And in doing that, if the city wants to buy water from the Daughertys, which is a good idea, the city has to get permission from the TCEQ in El Paso to do that. And to be able to get permission from TCEQ to do that, the city has to be able to show that it has the right to use the well, or at least has a plan to be able to try to use the well. In other words, you can't just say, I want to use a well that you don't own. And so the matters that you wanted to pull were matters that were required in order to determine that I could prepare a memorandum of understanding between the city and the Daughertys so that the city could move forward to get permission from the TCEQ to add it to the well, add it to the well system of the city. It wasn't going beyond the scope of something I was asked to. I was asked to prepare an MOU and that, or to try to work out a contract with the Daughertys. And the city can't work out a contract with the Daughertys yet because we don't have permission yet from the TCEQ to use it. We anticipate can because it's been used in the past. Right now, it's a private well. So we have to get permission from them to add it to the public well water supply system of the city. And so the matters that I noted here that I worked on, and I did the work here that's noted, were done in order to make sure that I was going to cover the basis for the city to then prepare the MOU that I prepared that's on the agenda to present that to the Daughertys. The Daughertys are in agreement with the MOU. They know that we have to go through a step for their final contract. We can't agree to buy water from them till we know that the TCEQ will let us hook into it. We don't know. We need to find out if we can hook into the existing well, or if we have to drill a new well. That could change the process. So the work I did was part of the task I was assigned.
Okay, Mr. Ponton,
I
I
did,
said-
at your request,
Yeah.
Mayor, I took out one of these
Pardon me,
matters. Yeah,
Mr.
sorry.
Ponton. Okay, so yes, I sent you an email and asked you to remove the portions that did not include the MOU. Do you have record of what that was that you removed?
I did, and I sent it back a revised bill up.
Megan, can you tell me if you asked him to reach out to TCEQ, or were you the one that was attending? In fact, were you not the one that reached out to TCEQ to get those answers?
Yes, so I did not ask him to reach out to TCQ. Actually, the utility director at the time and a utility employee and myself have been working with TCEQ since June of 2022.
Did you ask Mr. Ponton to set up a contract, or were we not under just an MOU?
I asked him initially to set up a contract and council approved it in October of 2022 for him to move forward with that process.
And then did we not go back and say that all we needed was an MOU?
That happened after his memo of opinion came out in May of 2020.
Hey, may I ask, in order to write an MOU, would the attorney need to contact TCEQ?
Not to my understanding. It's a memorandum of understanding. He is familiar with the history of Alpine and the use of the wells. It would have been just a starting document to move forward with the process.
Mayor, to prepare the MOU, I went and looked at the regulations that the Texas has regarding public water supply.
Mayor, I call for the question.
Regulations. And in doing so, I found out that the city has to have permission from TCEQ to have the well.
Okay.
So I simply called the TCEQ because I wanted to make sure what they said had to be done. They said, well, the city has to show that you have the right to use the water. Should have an engineer give us an application to use the well, and then we review it.
Okay. All right, so the question has been called. So the motion is for an amendment. Councilmember Rodriguez, can you restate your amendment?
To amend it by removing a total of $820 for the items that have to do with the battery well.
Okay, so we need to have a second.
I'll second the motion.
All right, So we need to have a vote on the amendment to remove $820 from the city attorney's bill. All in favor for the amendment to remove $820, please raise your right hand. Okay, so we have two council members in favor. Councilmember Nance.
Abstain.
Councilmember Nance is abstaining. Okay, all opposed, raise your right hand. Okay, so two council members are opposing. All right, so that falls to the mayor. And I did go over the bill and I looked at it and I contacted Mr. Ponton via email and I asked him to remove portions of his bill that I did not feel applied to the MOU. So in light of that, I'm going to vote in the negative. I do not approve the amendment. Okay. So we need to vote on the main motion as amended.
No, you should be good. If y'all would like to make an alternative motion, go ahead and do that now. If not, well, it won't be made.
Okay. Okay, all right, no further discussion. All right, so let's move on.
Say something on that?
Sure.
Megan, I would like that when the bills from the city attorney come out, if we can get notations on if whether that action was asked by somebody, whether you, Gio, or council.
So I'm a little lost. What did we just approve?
Nothing was
nothing.
approved.
They're gonna pay the whole bill, the whole amount.
No, I didn't think so.
Is the bill approved or not approved?
No.
It's not.
Councilor Stevens, huh?
Bill's
The
not.
whole bill is not approved.
No, there needs to be another motion to approve it. in
Okay,
full.
so I need a motion to approve it in full.
I'll make that motion to approve that bill in full.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay, I need a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, two council members are in favor. All opposed, raise your right hand. Two council members are opposed. Councilmember Nance is abstaining. And so I break the tie. I vote to approve the bill.
So just to make sure I'm trying to understand, we saw a number of attorney bills come to us as part of it. Okay, I'm trying to follow the bouncing ball. Which bill, clearly we got an update since the original one came out that we got. Is it the updated bill we approved or the original bill we approved?
It's the update.
Updated.
Thank you.
The updated bill is the one that I removed some items at the mayor's request.
Okay, moving on to information and discussion items. Councilmember Stokes, you're up first.
I would like to discuss the updates and options regarding the potential vacation, abandonment, and or sale of city property to Mr. Rutledge. This has come up, I don't know how long ago. I don't have an exact date that you started all this. I guess you talked about it. And then it just got dropped. Well, now we're holding this man hostage. He can't build his fence. He doesn't own it. And here were his 5 questions he asked me. And I'd like to read them out loud for you, Mr. Rutledge. Has the city ever taken steps to improve that property where his fence is? I believe I can answer that and say no. When is the last time the city maintained that property? And I probably can answer that and say never. Is the property openly accessible to anyone else? Is it open to the public? No, because your fence is on it. Am I right in saying all this? You correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. Are there any future plans at the city right now to use this property? Do y'all think we have any plans to use this property? No. And was the city surprised to learn it was there as I was? I had no clue. I think we have done this man wrong by not at least following up on it. There was no more talk of it. Nothing was happening of it. Megan told me she got something for Rod. She didn't like it. So you're being held in the middle of a argument that I don't think is fair to you. Mr. Ponton says that you should have to pay full price. I don't agree with that. I think we ought to sell it to you for $10 and know the consideration and be done with it. But I don't know how this council feels. So I wanted to bring it back up so we could all discuss it again. So this man can get on with his construction. He's done it the right way. He's done everything we asked. I don't know why we want this sliver of land, and I don't think it's worth, what did you get quoted? $2,400? Am I right in saying that? $2,900 for this little tiny piece of nothing that none of us want. So that's my spiel for tonight.
So
Go ahead.
So when this first came up and Mr. Rutledge attended the meeting, council asked for specific in the discussion of part of this ordinance. Clarification with abandonment, clarification with vacate, clarification with sale. Rod sent the original email with the ordinance on May 10th. I did ask Rod to follow up with the ordinance and added the language in which you guys requested. The actual breakdown of what all the options are for the city, to provide some structure and to provide some guidance. I also asked for him to let us know where in our ordinances this would best take place. It's also not in any format that we currently use. I asked for just some additional stuff that you guys had requested. I have not to this date got an updated ordinance from Rod Pond. So I forwarded it to you because we don't want this to sit there and not go anywhere. Mr. Stevens did reach out and inquire about the draft ordinance and had some questions in regard to some of the language. In which I did respond to him that I can provide to all of council. So when we spoke about this, we wanted it to be where you guys weren't doing the back and forth. Let's sell it to him for 10, let's sell it to them 2,900, let's sell it to them, let's abandon it. This came about because we've done that. We've kind of gone back and forth, and moving forward, we really don't need to do that. City of Georgetown provides kind of that outline structure, and a lot of cities do actually, where they say abandon and sell. They say vacate and sell. Everything in their ordinances say that we sell it. There's no option to abandon without there being a cost. But the very first thing that this ordinance says specifically at the very beginning is everything will be sold. And so, but then they define the different options. Are we selling an easement? Are we selling a right of way? Are we selling a part of a street? It also includes, which would qualify for him, Mr. Rutledge, a narrow section of land. But then it also provided the detailed information of really the options. Can we even legally sell it for $10? Or do we have to sell it by fair market value? None of that is in here. Not even a description of how we move that direction. What does the city council want to do as a whole? So I mean, I'm glad that it's back up for discussion, and you're right, council, you guys automatically make the decision. But if the one thing you guys keep saying is if someone else comes up, are you gonna treat them differently? If the next person comes up, are you
I
gonna?
think they're nearly gonna have to be, I think this is gonna come up for hundreds and hundreds of years, because it'll be the same thing. I can tell you what's fixing to come up, because I'm on a board that bought a building that has an alley
Right through it.
from the 1900s. There's a building on it. I mean, there is no alley. That's fixing to come up. But because they're a nonprofit, I imagine we will abandon it and they'll replat it and it'll end up theirs.
So those are the discussions that should be outlined in the ordinance. So you're not saying just because they're a nonprofit, because True Value and that Porters are also not nonprofits. And guess what? They have an alley that runs right through their property.
And did we give it to them?
No,
We still own it.
yes, the reason why West Texas National Bank paved that little alley where you exit.
Yeah.
That is a city alley that runs right through their property. But we
So-
don't have full access to it as a city. I can't go in there and, well, I'm a city employee, I'm gonna park my vehicle.
So what's your
Okay.
suggestion to help him solve his matter?
Okay, Councilmember Stevens.
So there was a draft ordinance that was put together. As Megan said, I made comment on it. There were elements on there. It talked about good cause.
Okay.
So I think there's two fundamental issues. One, do we always want to make sure we're going to sell it for fair market value? Or do we modify that where there is good cause? I wrote down 3 reasons I thought there were good cause. One, that the city allowed something to occur on city property sometime in the past. To
Nobody
me, that
knows
would be
when.
good cause. Okay. The second thing I put down there, the city hasn't done diddly with it for 20 years. That's long enough to say the city's not going to worry about it.
Okay.
Third was, and for good cause was, it's a not-for-profit. And it makes good sense for the city to donate that. Those are the 3 reasons I wrote down. I sent it back to Megan. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you repeat the first?
Yeah, the first,
I like to keep extra notes.
the first one was the city allowed it to occur. Meaning we approved a permit, we allowed a fence to be built, we allowed something, and we took no action. So to me, and I looked at a whole bunch of different reasons, those are the only 3 good causes I came up with. And in the case of his property, my view is it kind of fits the good cause. Now, I know we have to pass an ordinance to go do that. We have a process. In my 7 years on council, we always had an ordinance we worked through. We talked through them. But I think agreeing it's going to go for sale unless there's good cause. If we agree on a good cause, that limits the scope. In the case of Mr. Rutledge, we got to say, like city council meeting, we ought to put it up and say, if we agree that those are the 3 reasonable things for good cause, it'll be a simple ordinance to pass. Let's put it on the next meeting agenda.
I agree.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll put it on.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
I just want to apologize to Mr. Rutledge. I don't think it was any of council's intention to just kind of forget about it. We were waiting for guidance, and I think Rick just said it for all of us. We just want to set something up where it's fair to you and to everybody else that comes. I think that's something that this council had been trying to do and has reflected on a lot of times. People keep saying, well, in the past this, in the past that. Well, we're not talking about the past. Let's see what we can do to get things fair, and it's going to be for the best of the whole community, not just for one person. So that's the only thing that we're trying to do. I agree with what Rick says, and then we can come up with something like that. That makes it kind of set in stone on what we have to do.
I just wanted some clarification on whether we can do that legally and if the attorney would draft an ordinance.
What legal?
Because if I'm understanding correctly, we want to give the property away. Is that correct?
Well, that'll be a council decision.
So we
Give
can
it
do
away.
that.
But can we legally give the property?
Set a price of $10 on it.
See, that's what I say.
But
And
I
ours-
believe I've read a provision in the government code that says we have to sell it for the fair market value, and that's what I'm concerned about.
I think it's, let me, I didn't know this was gonna be discussed this much, but I had prepared a proposed stranded abandonment and conveyance ordinance that I'll let you have, and Megan may want to add to it, some of the stuff from the other cities that she talked about. But I think if you had that ordinance, my proposed ordinance talks about it being sold as a standard rule of the city. But I think if you had Counselor Stevens exceptions to that, based on prior history.
So you think we can give it away?
If the city found good cause based on prior history of something. I think that would do it, but I think it would require the city to sort of set forth when they made that decision, what those good causes were. To be an exception to the normal ordinance that says the city will sell it to the adjacent property owner for fair market value.
And so does that need to be set by ordinance prior to giving it away, or does it
Yes.
matter? I just
Yeah,
want-
but you could do them both at the same time. You could bring the ordinance up, and if the city adopted it at the next meeting, it became an ordinance.
So I think it would be better that the attorney wrote that ordinance, because I don't feel comfortable writing.
I am confused on the legality.
And there's no state laws that would oversee what we can do.
I'm looking at.
All the reviews I did were following what Gio was saying, which is it's really safer to sell rather than give away. But there are instances where it can be done.
So I thought the Georgetown, that's what I was following, making Georgetown. Sell, that's what you're trying to do, except for good cause.
It does, and I have sent an email to get a little clarification. So their backup packets, like I showed you for that one,
Yeah.
has the additional process for the public. So I would like, I mean, we can put it on the next agenda, but chapter 253 of the local government code does specifically talk about municipal accusations, sale or lease of property. So I would like to review that one more time to make sure.
So you're back on our radar.
Yeah.
We're trying
So
to,
it's
We
gonna,
haven't forgot you.
it's gonna be on the next agenda, City Secretary.
Depending on when we receive ordinance, we can definitely have it scheduled as soon as we receive it.
Okay. Councilmember Sandate.
I agree with Councilman Stevens, Councilman Stokes, all that.
Okay, Councilmember Nance.
Then does that put us about, I guess, a month and a half to 2 months out before it would be complete? Coming back from legal and then two readings of the ordinance?
It's really dependent on when we get it back. So if we get it back, we could do the first reading and then the second reading, it would be in a month.
I have a proposed ordinance here that talks about selling it. I can add the three exceptions recommended by Councilor Stevens to it. Starting point.
Any other discussion? Councilmember Rodriguez?
Why was that not included in our packet then to review and since that was coming up?
It wasn't an action item, so.
So with Judy's information and discussion item, it just happened to be one of those things that I was working back and forth behind the scenes, and that's why looking to say, here's
That's
here's
good.
my
As
thoughts.
long as he gets his
Yeah.
land, I don't care who does what.
Yeah, no, it's just part of trying to get it moved
Who
forward.
determines?
I feel like we're holding him hostage. You know, he's hired contractors who are sitting over there now going, well, this is where we are. Am I right? And they can't go forward because we haven't followed up and we dropped the ball. So I apologize. Now you're back on the radar. Let's see what happens.
So there is a specific portion of this or this state legislation, that 253.013, donation of real property or sorry, guys, or negative value to certain private persons. So it does break down additional guidance on.
And from what I understand, this was your childhood home, correct? And you've had that piece of land the whole time, correct?
I played on it when I was growing up. I was at the city council meeting sitting out there.
Okay, all right, any more discussion? Okay, let's move on to the next item. Counselor Stokes.
We're gonna discuss speed limit changes and addition of a stop sign in Ward 1 at specifically Avenue. I'm not
It's
down in
somewhere,
here. Did you
yeah.
put a,
Hey, you all Ross.
don't put a copy of the map? It was a huge.
Oh, you want the map?
I have.
This is where it's supposed to be out, right here.
Well, anyway, Daryl did this huge thing for me. I got called over and they were irate because people were going in people's yards. So Daryl said, well, we'll do a study. He did a study. We did a ride around thing. It was real fun. I thought I was in trouble.
In the back.
Were you in the back?
No, he goes, you need to come ride with me. I was like, where is he taking me? I'm a little concerned. So anyway, the stop, the crossway in question is horrible. You know, if I start at the PD in my tiny Buick and floor my car, I can be doing about 80 miles an hour by the time I get to that corner. That's in my Buick that has no power. So let's stop them right there. It's at the back of the school. The people just are going nilly-willy. And when those people are scared to be in their house, I think there's a problem. I know Daryl did a whole, get up here, Daryl. You're not getting out that either.
Yeah, Daryl wrote a memo.
Chop, chop, make all that money. Get up here. We made you cheap for a reason. And then I rode with him and highlighted and we did it. It was real cute. It was cute. We had a great time.
So what we're looking at is, we have had, I think our main intersection that we have accidents are at are Soros and 8th Street. That's the main intersection. And so that's, a lot of it is not only caused by people not yielding the right of way, but also because of the speed of the vehicles that don't have to stop the stop signs. They just assume that the people are gonna see them or yield right away to them. And so I started with Soros and 8th Street. And then I moved up to, so the intersection that Judy's talking about is the intersection of Avenue A and 8th Street. We have not had any accidents there. But what we're looking at there is if the reason that they drove into the person's property was not because it was the reason behind it was because the vehicle that was traveling north on 8th Street was going fast. And it wouldn't take much to go through that. So they were probably going the speed limit 30 miles per hour. The vehicle in front of it fails to yield right away. And they both ended up going into that person's into their fence. And then we have the other intersection at 8th and Del Rio. We have a lot of traffic that goes east and west on Del Rio Street. And we have yield signs there at on 8th Street that go north and south. But it would also help if we can have those intersections. I want 4 ways at these intersections, because not only that, it'll slow those vehicles down. The speed limit on Del Rio Street is already 20 miles per hour. The speed limit. And that's the other thing I was explaining to Judy. A lot of those areas, there's one that's 20 miles per hour, the next one over is 30 miles per hour, the next one over is 20 miles per hour. It doesn't make any sense. So we'll discuss that later. And the next intersection that I wanted a 4-way stop sign is over at the new apartment complex over on 7th Street, over by Richard Powell's and Johnny Vick's residence. The people that are going in and out of that apartment complex, they are again driving fast. There's nothing slowing them down. They're going right into the property. And one of the things that I try to make people understand, just because there's a yield sign does not mean they have to stop. They have to stop to yield right away to other vehicles. That's when they have to stop. And so a lot of people have the misconception that if there's a yield sign that they need to come to a stop. They don't have to stop. If they have a good view of both sides of the road, they're just going to go through that intersection because it's the yield sign. That's all the yield sign is telling them to do, is just yield right away to the other direction of traffic. So if y'all have that query that I did, that's a text dot query that I did for the last 10 years, indicating the auto accidents. And if you see there on Del Rio and 8th Street, that one had injuries to it. And if you see that one at Soros and 8th Street, there's the little 3 dots. It means that there's multiple accidents there.
On that one, Daryl, just within the last year and a half, the one on 8th Street in Soros, we just opened the parking on that street because it was safe, because there were no accidents, is what Judy had said.
Right.
So now we're changing that and saying it is a dangerous part.
No,
and put a stop sign.
that's not what we're saying. I think if people follow the directions and park correctly, I think that's part of the problem, is that people don't park. They leave their vehicles too far out on the roadway, and that's what's causing the problems.
So a stop sign's gonna help that.
I think so. Because it's gonna slow that traffic down. Because again, the traffic that goes east and west, there's no signs for them. And so again, people just take it for granted that they're gonna go through an intersection and they don't have to worry about it. As we're taught in defensive driving, we're taught to learn to drive defensively. And a lot of people lose that as they get older. They just take it for granted that the other people's they're gonna be driving right. And I think if we have a 4-way intersection there, we can slow the vehicles that are going east and west on Soros. And then it'll give the opportunity for the people that are going north and south to be able to take a better view of the traffic.
And I agree that we do lose it. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm not sure that it's a stop sign, because I've seen them go through the stop signs. You have too. I
Yes,
mean,
ma'am.
And wave at you as I go
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
You know, so.
One question,
Yes, sir.
Daryl, Mr. Lozoya, on that is, if you're on the east side of Sul Ross, there's hard curbing and the asphalt goes all the way to the ends. The further you head out west, there's like no curbing and the grass kind of starts hitting out onto the streets area. and stuff
Yes.
Like that. Do we know, when your comment about the width of the street and people parking more towards the middle part of that, do we know exactly where those, I guess where the line is, or where that road should start and end?
It's gonna be in the city plat.
Yeah, it should be on the city plat.
Because
But-
I guess my question would be, is that road's quite wide on the east side? Should it be similarly width on the west side?
No, because when they have you noticed that one house, and I know exactly what you're talking about, that house across the street from the administration building, it makes it narrow, but you can tell that house is probably it's at least 100 years old. And so when they built these houses, they didn't
Mr. Butler just finished.
that they didn't designate them right. And so unfortunately, we have that problem. And so we're actually looking at a sidewalk grant for safe school walking. And that's one of the things that we have to look at for all those.
So Ross Avenue used to be a main through street in Alpine before they made the 2 1-ways. Avenue E is not a through street at all.
Councilmember Stevens?
So, Carol, one of your recommendations is change the speed limit to 25 miles an hour citywide.
I would love that.
I've gotten huge impact from Ward 5. They would love to see that happen. So in my view, that's probably one of the things we as council ought to say, let's go to 25 miles an hour. Now, what that does, it immediately begins to slow things down.
Yes, sir.
Okay. It may help us understand better. Now, I'll also tell you, that's not going to cause people to slow down, because I can tell you on Avenue B from
It's a free
free for all going down to Avenue B, it starts all the way up to Sol Ross.
Lockhart.
Yeah, I did talk with the head of facilities up there, Rob Jacob, the other day, and he said, I asked him, I said, from a Sol Ross standpoint, would you put a speed bump on the Sol Ross property and a slow sign? If you take care of that, we can probably work the city stuff, on Avenue B. And he said he would go off and consider that. So
Your main complaint on Avenue B would be very happy with it.
I know that, yes.
He would.
Yeah, but isn't the Museum of the Big Bend expansion is opening up. You got the students coming down there. That's gonna make it, I think, safer all the way around. So back to, I think, if we do a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, we ought to consider that and put that on the table. I think that helps a lot. And then stop signs, yield signs, we gotta work them, as we work them, but that's kind of where my point is.
And I would
Okay.
love to work with each of the wards to take care of each of the wards like that.
All right, city manager?
So I definitely think it's a wonderful idea, and this is the downside to it. We would have to spend money to replace all of the speed limit signs. Eddie has been informed of the recommendation coming from Chief Lasoya to get a firm count on how many speed limit signs we would need to replace. The cost of signs has increased. So if we do move that direction, I would like to structure it so we phase it so that we don't overtax the department. And we may ask to contract to have someone just go and do it for us, because they would have to do it. Yeah, I told Eddie about it, and he's more than welcome to do it, but then he's like, do you know how many signs we have? So just a heads up, if we move that direction, I think it would be wonderful. It'd be great, because I don't know 30 to 20 half the time.
I didn't even know it was different.
I don't want to get pulled over.
That is-
Yeah. So if you go, Uvalde, so around the elementary school, just because when we do the school zones around in the morning and the afternoons, Uvalde is actually 30 miles per hour. One street over on Eagle Pass, it's 20.
Yeah.
And then Del Rio is 20, and then the next street over is 30. And so it's a little
It
cockeyed.
doesn't make any sense. We
Oh,
need to
they
be
must
more
really have
uniform.
to find.
It does, because your neighbor called me one time.
I'm sure, I'm probably speeding.
All right, Councilmember Sandate.
Like Gallego, it's 20, then it jumps to 25, and then it jumps to 20.
Yes. So back on Gallego, because of the community center was taking care of kids back then, and there was a major school, a bus was dropping off a lot of the kids that were in the after school program over at the community center. We had to drop the speed limit drop to 20, and before Martin took over, I did a traffic study and I turned it into council requesting to change that back to 30. But yeah, we can just get one uniform speed limit throughout. And so my guys don't have to be guessing too on what speed, what.
Or the residents.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the residents, of course.
It'd be safer for everyone.
Yes.
And then I think any suggestions you have, you're the professional in regards to stop signs. I think,
I think
I
it's
think that's what we
I think
should
it's just
do.
my experience that I've been able to watch that community as it grows. So.
Thanks, Darryl.
any other discussion?
I think some of that, where it's 20 here and all that, it's our fault that we don't go back and we change things like you're talking about on Del Rio. that was a daycare too.
Yes, it
Same-
was
same
a
as
Christian
the-
school.
Yeah, so same as the community center.
Mhm.
So I think those things kind of need to be cleaned up after. I don't know whose responsibility it was or what, but I think we need to, if these schools close and all that, then change it back to the regular speed limit. and
So I
instead of
was-
Just letting linger.
I was leaving Austin. I don't know if you all ever been on that road. It's 290 as you're leaving Austin. The little town, and they had all that construction and stuff. Well, I decided, I said, you know what, I might as well get some food. So I turned around and I went through a residential area. And they had these big speed bumps, probably like the size of Megan's desk. And it was flat, it wasn't hilly, it was flat, well, kind of like plateaued. And they had the yellow flashing lights for some of the areas we need to do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm all for that. Yeah, Conroe also does that.
Yeah,
Conroe,
that's-
Texas also has that.
Yes, solar,
No solar.
yes.
Stevens?
So who owns the action to write the change? I'm just following up kind of from Judy's comment earlier. We
We
let
do it, we do it.
I'm gonna take the action to go draft one or GO or
I have it, I've added it to our tentative agenda for the next meeting to a resolution to add the stop signs.
okay.
I would like us to probably game plan the speed limits.
Okay.
And so put that on the next.
Okay, Councilmember Nance?
One last question. We have a possible $220,000 walkability biking text dot study coming in. Does any of this dovetail back in with that from that grant?
It definitely will. So this is the planning stage, and the items that we're looking at are specifically the sidewalks and connectability, especially with the schools. I know Daryl has visited with Marcy on that specifically. But it also included the safety and security features of like the hawk lights and different features that we could add to it. So once we have an engineered plan, we can apply for all the tech stop grants that are available to move forward.
Okay, and I do also want to mention for everybody here and anybody who watches the YouTube video, that these are city streets. TxDOT owns the main highways
Yes.
and we cannot change the speed limits
Right.
on those.
And we can't add crosswalks to the
Yeah.
highways either.
I have residents contacting me all the time and they just don't
Yeah, but
understand.
we can't do that.
Yeah, we can't do the one ways or 118 or the loop road, correct? Because those all belong to TxDOT.
223 and 118.
Yeah, so that's not under city control. I just want to make sure everybody understands that. But we can control our streets, which is what we're talking about here.
Those
Yeah.
are added by the state.
They're state.
Has to do that.
Okay, anything else?
Thank you, Daryl.
Yes. you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
And again, I welcome you all. If you need me to do a traffic study in your ward or areas, please let me know.
Okay,
I
great.
can attest, he does a great job.
Good job. Okay,
You'll have to do a ride along with him.
that's okay.
Just not in the backseat.
I don't know, I'll comment.
All right, so discussion and information item number 3 has already taken care of. So we're moving to action or discussion item number 4. Councilmember Stevens.
Thanks very much. So the main intent behind this is one, there are a number of items and Megan and I have gone back and forth and Gio and I about some things to potentially change how we work our agenda for city council on looking at that ordinance. Because of all the work we have going on, Megan's suggestion is we push that out to September. I'm okay with that, but there is one item I would like for us as council to talk about moving forward with sooner or later prior to an update for the ordinance. And that is House Bill 2840, which was passed and effective September 1st, 2019, provided council latitude to be able to allow citizens to talk anytime during the meeting, but still stay within their 3 minutes. I get lots of feedback and input that says, hey, talking at the time that council's considering a particular topic is much more valuable than making comments at the beginning of the meeting because they don't know where council is going to go relative to the discussion. My opinion is that we as council ought to give the mayor latitude to allow that to occur going forward until we can work the ordinance September going forward. It does not add any time to the agenda because 3 minutes is 3 minutes. But I think it does provide relevance for us as council to hear directly from residents on a particular topic. So that's the reason I put that on the agenda.
Okay, I want to mention that you and I had talked about this House Bill 2840 and that exact thing. And I said the concern was that it would add time to the agenda. But when you pointed out, everybody has 3 minutes
Yep.
and they can choose to use it at the public comment section at the beginning,
Yep.
or they can choose to use it as at the discussion.
Yep.
And so I guess the only thing we would need to do is maybe change the card so that the person could check off whether they're using their 3 minutes at comment or at discussion.
I have a question. Is that 3 minutes per topic or
No,
three?
3 minutes total. So they still got 3 minutes. It's a limit of 3 minutes, no different than now. Anyone can talk about any of the agenda items, but they got a 3-minute clock.
Yeah, and I also wanted to mention the reason I was concerned about the time is because that's what I hear residents telling me. They don't like to come to these meetings because they're so long. And then I put a Facebook survey out. If you guys haven't answered that yet, please do so. It's still running. I printed this at 3 o'clock to find out what is the reason people don't want to come and the meetings are too long. I had 2 questions that were very similar to that. Received 14 votes and 10 votes, total of 16% of the answers were because the meeting was too long. So as long as we're not adding length so that we can get people here.
We did it before. No, this council did it before and it worked out fine and we did not extend the agenda. And again, it's just following state law.
I think that's a good compromise.
And even if we do add time to it, I think it would be better to cut the time, cut the amount of things that are put into the meeting. I think it's more important that we get the citizens' input and that they be allowed to do it when they want to. When they do it at the beginning, we're not allowed to interact with them. And sometimes interaction is what they're wanting.
Okay, Councilmember Nance, you had your hand up, sorry.
The
You'll be
one
next.
question I had was then, do they still only have one time? So they could use the 3 minutes at the very start or before an action item or a discussion? We're not splitting time and putting them on the clock multiple times.
So the way in which we did it before, we gave them 3 minutes. And when they use their 3 minutes, they could use them all on one, or they could do it on a couple topics.
But are they speaking at one, they come to the rostrum at one time, or do they multiply, like, do they come and speak for 1 minute, sit back down, come back and speak for a minute and a half? I could think that would be difficult to try and time.
Yeah,
Right.
my view was first step, let's get them to, they can come up during the discussion. That may be a nuance we can figure later on. We don't want to add any time. I can tell you how we did it before. We gave them 3 minutes. Some came up multiple times and used your 3 minutes. 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. But at this point, I'm just happy because to get allowing people to come up because that's been a huge feedback. And Catherine, look at your survey, there are people who said, no, that
6 people.
I don't want to come because my 3 minutes to speak in the discussion section and not just public comments. And I didn't come because 3 minutes is enough time to stand up and speak. That's 13 votes. So that goes back to another high percentage, and that's a consistent message I'm getting in Ward 5.
Yeah,
But I'm happy at this point. One time, pick your time, max 3 minutes.
All right, y'all.
Councilmember
The
Stubbs.
only
you're
reason
next.
I remember us changing it where people were getting up over repeated. We could not get through a meeting for people asking questions. You know, I'm reading this different than the 13 votes. I'm seeing 6 votes or 7 votes. I'm not reading 15 or 16 people. I know the people in my ward, if they have a problem, they call me. I get up here and I mouth off and I talk. If they're only going to be allowed 3 minutes, I think that's wonderful. But it's these people who are going to come up and you're going to have to stop them because they're going to want to do 3 minutes for this. Well, now I want to talk on this. Well, now I want to talk on this. That's the only problem I foresee with it. I don't mind getting their opinion. I think it's wonderful when they come up here and talk. But not when it absolutely gets us so off track, we cannot continue a meeting. And then that's why the people say they're long and boring. Because you've got these people who, number one, a lot of them don't live in the city and don't vote. But they're gonna come up here and complain, and I know we have to listen to them too. So, you know, if we're limiting everybody to 3 minutes, I think that's fine. But when it starts bogging these meetings down and we can't accomplish anything, and people are leaving because it's 10 o'clock at night and we've had to do, then we don't accomplish anything. I don't, because I get tired. I want to go home early. What does Megan think?
Megan's hands up next.
I'll do your job.
Well, I think because the mayor does have current discretion, that if we were to compromise and allow for the 3 minutes at the mayor's discretion, she would be able to say, unfortunately, you've been up here, we need to move
Thank you.
on. I
Uh-huh.
think in September, when we fully sit down and look at this, in light of my comment that Chris is also, Ms. Rodriguez has also brought up, is limiting the number of items. Because we do try to overload our agenda, try and get as much done. I think that if we balance that out with a compromise for all of those involved, I think we could use the mayor's discretion at this time moving forward, so we can see the effects and how it works. And then in September, have the full discussion if this is the process we want to continue, or do we want to slightly modify it? Do we want to change it? But
Okay.
currently, the mayor does have that discretion, and then we could balance it out with allowing, the 3 minutes. And if we have, Bob Smith up here, I hope there's no Bob Smith in Alpha.
Oh, I know it.
every item, then the mayor could say, you know what, you've been up here multiple times, we're trying to move the process forward. If you have questions and concerns, please address your council member, or the city manager.
Did you get all
That
that?
is an option.
I did. It's an experiment, basically. So between now and September, we'll see how that process works.
And it's one shot. It's not multiple shots, it's one
One
shot,
shot.
maximum
Okay.
3
Or
minutes.
make it a good one.
Uh-huh.
It's no different than the beginning.
And if they have the card and there's the little box that they check this or this, they know that that's their one shot.
One shot, yep.
Yeah.
And then it also would help Gio, because he'll know as the items come up, that, okay, I've got 4 people who want to talk on that, but you can do the motion, you can do the second, and then when you open up for discussion, it's no, Mayor, we have 4 individuals in the audience who would like to speak on the side.
Okay.
I don't know, that does regulate it a little bit more with some structure side to it, and it doesn't become a free for all, but it does allow them to have.
Councilmember Sandate?
I agree with the one shot, 3 minutes or 1 minute per item, as long as it's up to 3 minutes.
Any other comments, discussion? All right, moving on. Let's see. Okay, so we're at discussion item number 5, Councilmember Stevens.
So boards and commissions, I just want to make sure we're all aligned on boards and commissions and an understanding of what it means by place. Okay, so that's what I'll start with. So if I look at the boards and commissions, and I've got the whole spreadsheet, I'm sure you've all seen it. When I go down, there are some people that I'll go talk to that are in place 5. My presumption is that means Ward 5 from my perspective. Do I understand that correctly?
The places are designated in the ordinances. But yes, typically you will find the place 5 means Ward 5.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. That's very helpful. I noticed there is a place 5 who is from the county in the Animal Advisory Board. Okay, and that is allowed, and in theory, that would be my selection for place 5.
Yes, I can look at the ordinance and give you a definite answer, but I believe so.
Okay. And on the going down to the High Committee, so there is a place 5 that is vacant for Arts and Historic. I will come back with a recommendation for that individual to get that filled. I've been off working that. That individual's already said yay barely. The other question I would ask is, there are council members who have been assigned to support each of the committees. My predecessor was assigned to the High Committee. How do we make those decisions? And I know Sarah Tandy was for the Music Advisory Board. So I would think we want to kind of get lined up about where we are on that.
I think we need to go ahead and try and go for it again. It's not right for y'all to come in and see the council to say, well, like, you might have an interest in something else. Sarah might have an interest in something else. I think we should look at it again.
I did send an email out to council advising them that we are going to have this on the next agenda.
Right.
And if anybody was interested in switching, let me know. And I do have 2 members that are interested in switching.
Do we want to
Yeah,
talk about that now so the rest of us don't overlap, or?
Darren is switching with Martine on the Parks Board. He has obviously an interest in it.
Okay,
And Martine is moving over to the Music Advisory.
super.
And I prefer to stay on zoning and planning because I've given them their directives and have broken them into groups. And we're working on that. That's fairly new, so I don't want to leave there yet.
Okay, I'm happy to work with Hot. It's not a problem if no one wants it, because what you already had, I had to pick that up.
My building standards, if anybody wants it, I don't mind.
Okay,
Can I request that you stay on building and standards?
I'm gonna stay on
Keep them
animal
on track.
advisory. I
Keep
like
them
that.
on track and you direct with them.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that. The other is, I've gotten inputs. Let me talk a little about Transportation Committee. Many of you are not on council when the Transportation Committee was put in place. My concern is, and I'm happy to share, and I can get it out to all of you, there's a study done in 2020 that talked about the significant increase that's going to occur in transportation as the bridge gets opened up from OJ into Presidio and the number of trucks. When you look at the transportation study, and specifically it's the US 67 corridor master plan, we have 11 out of 18 intersections in the city of Alpine that are going to be in distress as traffic significantly increases. I believe it behooves us to be thinking about that. That's why that committee was originally conceived. I think having Daryl be part of that activity, because it's all about traffic flow, because the number of trucks going to flow through Alpine is going to significantly increase. And I think part of that committee needs to think about, how do we get dollars from TxDOT to be able to make sure our intersections are taken care of, because we have 4 intersections that are rated C to D, and they're going to go to F, which means we'll have huge traffic and safety issues. So that was the rationale behind it. I'm happy to put a draft together to come back to council that says, here's what their intent purpose would be. And I just wanted to raise that and get your all feedback.
And
Council,
so,
another thing on transportation on that issue is that TxDOT wants to defer to locals on things like truck bypasses. They don't want to plan it from above. They want to look, if you want it, they want you to plan it, but they might pay for it if you did plan it. So.
And if we don't think about it, we're never going to see the money. And then by the time 10 years comes down the road, we're going to be in trouble in the wrong direction. That's my worry.
okay, chief,
Just to throw this out there, another way to look at that money too is through getting our officers certified at commercial motor vehicle inspections. That's how Crane PD like makes a lot of their money.
Yep.
so what do we need to do that?
Long school,
Long? school?
a very long school.
Okay,
You know, that's school for them, but I'm thinking about the
Yeah.
planning, having the enforcement to go with it
Yes,
is
sir.
an important part of that.
I know a lot of our reasoning was taking that off was they had never met and there was one member. These committees, just as the Airport Advisory Board that you're going to speak on in a second, they weren't done away with forever. They were done away with at the moment so that they could update these boards and commission the rules and the regulations. At the point we did Airport Advisory, there was one member. They had never met with us. And that was just,
Transportation, not airport.
no, the Airport Advisory also. I talked to these members. There was one voting member when I talked to them before we did away with it, and transportation. So those were the reasons and when I was approached by the people from Airport Advisory and Transportation, I said, it doesn't mean we can't restart them. These are very restartable. They're not, we didn't do away and go, no, we'll never have that again. That isn't what was happening. We were trying to get something in place so that it would make it easier for GEO to update all the boards and commissions. And it did make it easier. Those had members, they had council members, they had everybody going. So I don't mind looking at these things. If we have people that want on them and people that'll work and do good for the city of Alpine, I'm all for it. I've asked everybody I put on one of these boards, my first question is, do you love Alpine? So when they can say yes to that, and I believe them, I'll put them on there. That's what we have to have.
so the court is called Corridor 67, correct?
So
With
it's the
the-
US 67 corridor
Right.
master plan.
I know that's coming, TxDOT, I'm always getting emails from TxDOT to attend trainings and webinars and stuff like that. So a transportation committee is probably needed,
Yeah, so that.
and then they can look for grants or.
Yeah, so that study was completed in 2020. All of the things going on the way to Fort Stockton is directly out of the funding came out of that.
Okay,
We didn't do anything. We got no funding.
okay.
The second
So this
bridge at
commit-
Presidio is finally under construction again, and it's gonna be finished in about 3 months.
Yes, and that
So a
plan's not getting
a
it.
committee could take some of the burden into looking at the funding and talking to
Want people
TxDOT.
who are thinking about it, coming back to us with recommendations so that we can take the actions relative to next time.
That's good. Okay, Councilmember Sandate?
And they're working on that bridge at Presidio now, so.
Oh, I know. But it's gonna
They're
happen before we
pouring
know it.
concrete.
Yep.
Everything, so.
Yep.
It won't be long. It's done.
Okay, Councilmember Nance.
I guess a couple things I just had was, when we talk back in places and stuff, I think there's people in other wards of the city that are in these different places for the boards. And they can be from anywhere, right?
Yes.
So we're just filling in. Okay, I just wanted to make sure on that. And then the last one was, say, coming back to Parks Board and everything else like that. Council tasked them with 9, I believe, objectives. So do we feel like, I don't think it makes sense to have a board unless you have tasks. If there are tasks, and then do those tasks come from council?
So when I was on council, we gave every one of the board's tasks.
Yeah.
That was in my first 7 years.
So we would task
them.
them, we would
Same thing.
task.
And I think
Yeah.
that's what happened. It wasn't so much the boards weren't doing what they were supposed to. Council was not giving them the tasks.
Yeah.
P and Z, the parks,
Yeah.
once they were given these things, they got very active. They started
Yeah.
going. So I think it's up to council. It's up to council to work these boards and commissions.
So I'm happy to draft language and some draft tasks, come back to you all that says this works, or you're smoking dope, Rick, let's try something else. Okay.
Councilmember.
Well, the GO has it set in place now that you have guidelines to go by. We have those guidelines
know.
set in place.
Yep.
And they'll all be, there were so many different guidelines for different things. It was overwhelming. When I started looking at them, nobody could answer a direct question because there wasn't a direct place to go look. GO took care of that. He put them all in place for us. Now they'll fall back into place much easier.
Great,
All right.
I got the action.
What other boards do we have that have city representatives on them?
Are you talking about our boards within the city?
Yeah,
or-
well, like I know Darren's is with the tax and
The library.
and he's on the library and all that.
Completing that list for you.
Okay, and then how do we determine that with every new council, do we reappoint or they just stay on forever and as long as they're on council?
We
or-
have not reappointed until the council person in the position changes. Several of them are very specific that the mayor sits on, like the housing authority. Martine was put on the Alpine Public Library Board. I don't, no, Judy is on the Family Crisis. She was on to that. So when the individual doesn't get reelected or they're no longer in office, then we bring it up for discussion. If we want, we could make it a rotating deal, to switch it up.
So probably a future agenda.
I think we ought to look at it, whether there, I mean, there may be other people that have a desire to serve on those. And if you're waiting for a person, you know, Judy might be on for 6 years before she decides, you know, before she turns out. Someone that just served 2-4 years may have had a desire to work with the crisis center.
I'm finishing that list so that I know exactly all of them. The Housing Authority was a new one until we were like, hey, did you know you're supposed to sit on this board? So let me finish up that list and then I can tell you who the current positions are and if there's any that we're just not aware of that we haven't been.
Good deal.
Okay.
All right. Okay, moving on to discussion item number 5, Councilmember Stevens.
Can I
I'm on number
request,
6.
can I request a break?
Yes, I was gonna do a break
Sorry.
after we did these, but we can go now. So 5-minute break. And I was gonna tell you that, Martine, you can always
Discussion item.
Can we?
Identify the 4 issues and then we'll cover it under the action.
Okay, so it'll just be quick.
Yes, ma'am, I got
Yeah.
the list. There's, remember,
Blood
we don't
sugar's
get to
going
see,
down. I see.
remember, we
Whenever
don't
y'all
get
are
to
ready.
see the agenda before it comes out. And so I knew it would be an item we ought to put on here, not knowing it was gonna be an action.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm. If that happens, you can always withdraw.
Hey.
Well, where, I'm sorry, I just wanted to let you know, whenever you're ready.
Okay, all right. All right. Mhm. Okay, calling the meeting back to order. Let's get back to it. So we are on discussion item number 6.
So discussion item number 6, I put this on and submitted it because we have to submit it by 5 PM on Wednesday, not knowing what will be on the rest of the agenda since we don't chair. There are 4 items that I know we'll talk about it under the action item. I'm just going to go through the items and then we'll talk about it under the action item. And that deals with Skyway Gardens. 1, the red lines, whether or not we have agreement between the developer and the city. Number 2 was the chip seal overlay pavement of the 30 feet of Lechigia Road had not been completed for phase 1. Number 3, the studies to ensure that the city can provide water and wastewater hookups to the new development had not yet been completed. And number 4, concerns expressed about drainage issues associated with phase 2 development. And I did considerable work relative to the drainage discussion, have talked with the city, talked with the county, talked with the state. And I believe I understand why we have all the water running through Lechigia. And I'll talk about that when we get to the action item. I'm done with that item.
Okay, all right. So you moved that we discuss it during the action item.
There's no motion required.
I know, but
Yeah.
is that what you're suggesting?
I'm done with my discussion.
Okay. All right. So moving on to discussion item number 7.
So I've got lots of questions and the reason it's on there for the wastewater treatment plant and Meg, you and I didn't get a chance to talk about it. I was told that the effluent water going to the golf course has been turned off. Since that's part of Ward 5, I thought it worthwhile to bring up because I'm getting lots of questions from the golfers about what's going on. So.
Actually, I have information for you.
Super, I knew you would.
So part of my implementations has been to get updates from all of the departments, specifically on things that have become kind of key issues.
Yep.
So we actually haven't been providing affluent water to the golf course since last year.
Ooh.
So the initial impact one was our wastewater treatment plant couldn't actually produce affluent water. For those of you in the public who don't know what affluent water is, it is the last part of the wastewater treatment plant steps. So once all of the sewage goes through the system, we have what is called affluent. It can be used for specific things regulated by TCEQ. One of the things that we are permitted to use it for is for our golf course. They water the portion of the golf course with it. They have not had access to it for some time. So the initial problem was we couldn't produce it. We had too many solids in the end result and had to push it all the way back to the beginning of the system and repeat. Because we only had one operational aerator, we were having issues with the bar screen and everything else. It was just kind of we're rotating it until we could break it down far enough. We have now got both aerators in place. They're both running back to the normal side, but we are now having issues with our clarifiers, which is one of the steps through the process that reduces that solids again. For those of you who want to visit our wastewater treatment plant, let me know. I'll take you out there.
It's lovely.
I toured. I went out last week.
The clarifiers are 2 basins. They're about 10 to 14 feet deep. You pay close attention, the solids settle to the bottom as the clear water starts to come up. It bubbles over and then it goes on to the next contact basins with the chlorine and stuff like that. We're not getting the solids settling low enough. So basically our solids are about a foot from the top. We are looking at bringing in another company. We've done in the past multiple times to pull all that extra sludge out so we can move forward. We are down to 1 clarifier. We're having Skinner replace the start, help fix the second one. So once again, we're kind of like 1 step in. The other part of the affluent water, and I'm going to slaughter how to say these words, is we are required to provide certain levels of testing.
Yep.
And so the city hadn't been providing the full testing side, but only been doing one part of the testing. As a result of a lot of research, a lot of making sure we're moving forward with it correctly, the intraco concentration is too high. And so they test it on a regular basis, but because they can't get that number to the permitted required state level, they can't send it off to us.
Okay, so we're not compliant, we are compliant to make sure we head in the right direction. We're not compliant with providing the effluent water. Is there a forecast, Megan? Is it like a month, 6 months? Or is it a budget issue that we're gonna talk about in the next few weeks?
So in speaking with Caitlin, who's been helping enrich the two individuals out there, they have actually started to reach out to other entities and they're going every route to figure
Okay.
out what do we need to either put in the system? We haven't had both aerators moving long enough to actually digest that side of it to see if it will work. We're meeting our permit requirements.
Yep.
We're just not meeting the part where we can facilitate.
Okay.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
And I just want to clarify, so it's enterococci levels, and that's a bacteria. So we have to make sure that those levels are low enough. Otherwise, you can kill somebody if they're immune compromised. So we have to be very careful with our effluent, which you may also know as gray water. Yeah, so I just wanted to add that.
I had a couple of questions, Megan, on this. One was, and this pertains somewhat to the Parks Board as well. Do we know the size of the pipe that goes from the wastewater treatment to the tank?
I believe it's either 4 or 6.
Okay, 4 6 and then if everything was actually fixed and then properly working, they'd be able to fill up that tank.
Oh, yes, we used to fill it up,
Used to
no
fill it
problem.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's not a,
Actually, we would fill the tank and then we have to dispose of the remaining because the tank would be full.
really?
Is there anywhere else that we use that water besides the golf course?
So there's a strategy, I know at one point of pumping it into the old spring area.
Yeah, that's what I had heard that,
So that
you know,
would
we
fit
wanted
back
to
in
do
there.
that, but then there was nothing.
So we haven't moved forward with that project for multiple reasons. One, the TCQ requirements to be able to have that in an open area,
That's.
where people would be able to
Get in and
Yes,
swim
if they tried to
because of the
swim in it.
bacteria.
Two, we don't actually have the piping to go that direction, and so we would have to lay all new piping in, either from the golf course back that area. There is a third entity that is interested in our gray water, and that is Sul Ross State University.
Yep.
Do we not use it to water the parks?
At this point, it would be too dangerous. We could kill somebody.
Well, you gotta get.
But we
the
use it
plumbing,
on the golf course.
You gotta get the.
We're not
plumbing.
using it at the golf course.
It's the plumbing, it's the piping. We
It's
don't
the-
have.
Oh, it's the
piping.
piping.
Once you're clean, it's gonna be a piping issue.
And it has to be a specific pipe. It's a purple pipe.
Yeah.
So that when you are putting it in, it's very recognizable that that's what it is.
It's not important.
Councilmember Stokes? Sandate?
We had a pipe stand there in the golf course too, right? The contractor would go in there and fill up the trucks. Was that gray water too coming out?
No, that was not
Nope.
very well.
No. Yeah, the water right on the corner of Brown and
Yeah.
back. No, that's regular water.
Okay.
Yeah.
One last question. When was do we know the last date when it was possible to, or then we cleared everything out? How long have we had distressed water that was below or had high levels of,
I don't have it an exact date of the last time we sent it out to them.
gotcha, I'm just wondering how long the problems exist.
Been at least 6 months.
It's been a year. I can.
It's been a year, okay.
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 All right, moving on to discussion item number 7, Councilmember Stevens. Or number 9, pardon me.
Number 8.
Oh, we did number 8. It's getting late.
I'm trying to scream through these.
Okay, number 8. Thank
All I'm
you.
gonna ask is, I get lots of questions about the paving game plan. I know Megan, you're trying to work that. Yeah, that's all. Thanks very much. You'll publish that out to council.
So yes, so the
Website.
Public Works Department is gonna update their website to include the 2023 seal coating blocks. They're gonna do 15 blocks at a time,
Super.
so that there's not the delay. They're gonna clean, sweep, lay in that, and I do have the first 15 listed that I will have up on the list.
Super. Thank you.
Okay, actually, do have questions on that one too, sorry. The milling and stuff like that, like an asphalt zipper, do we know anyone in our area that has something like that? Does Jarrett have that?
Jarrett does have a zipper.
You do have zipper, okay.
Oh,
Is that anything, I wonder how much lower that would cost? Has that ever been considered to bring something like that in-house? Because when we do work right now, then we do a complete what do they call it, FDR, full depth reclamation. So we do that by shipping everything out, shipping it back in. I guess my interest is, has it ever been presented to the city to purchase an asphalt zipper, and would that make sense if we were bringing pavement in-house?
It would make sense because we could mulch it back up into our base, which would help us in expense wise, not having to buy all new base. It hadn't been discussed in the last go round. The initial step was to buy the heavy equipment. That was not one of the items listed. It was basic heavy equipment, the asphalt machine, loader, paver, that kind of thing. There wasn't any discussion of the zipper. I do know in the past when the county had those big piles of, or not county, when TxDOT had those big piles of the highway that had been pulled up.
Yep.
We actually utilize some of that in our patching machine, the hot patcher,
Yep.
because it melts it down and then we could use it to patch roads. So that, I mean, that's something to look at and discuss.
Good budget discussion.
Do we plan, in your estimation, do we plan on continuing to use third party for paving or bringing it in-house? Do we know?
For next fiscal year, we will definitely use third party to rebuild. And then we'll have in-house for seal coating so that we can further develop an actual actionable plan to bring it either in-house or buy the equipment and what we need to do.
Councilmember Sadaki?
No question.
Okay,
I'm good.
good. Okay, all right, so moving on to discussion number 9.
So my response is simply, thank you for providing the data. I'm done.
Thank you.
I
All right,
so much
discussion-
more, look.
I know.
Egger on.
It's 8 o'clock. Discussion item number 9, also Councilmember Stevens.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, that was number 9. I'm done.
Oh, okay, that was number 9.
It was the list that I had.
Okay.
You did the
Okay.
paving and I'm done with number 9.
Okay, great, great.
Because you provided the data. That's all I was looking for.
Okay, good. All right, so we're going to move to action items. I want to let everybody know that we're changing the procedure just a little bit so that we're more in line with TOMA. A lot of times Megan gives us the background information before we have a motion. And so instead, we're going to have the motion so that we can discuss, and then she can give us the background information. Okay, all right, so action item number 1, city manager.
Approve the first reading of ordinance 2023-05-01. An ordinance annexing the proposed Skyway Gardens 2 development that is adjacent and contiguous territory to the city legally described as 5.0 acres out of section 102, block 9, Brewster County, Texas, being a portion of that certain 10-acre tract described in volume 314, page 453, official public records of Brewster County, Texas, approving a service plan for the annexed area, approving a development agreement between the developer and the city, providing findings of fact, providing cumulative and subdivision clauses, providing an effective date.
Okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, now discussion, city manager.
I would like to ask, because at our May 26th meeting, it was brought up in regards to the ability for Chris Rodriguez to be able to discuss. I know their attorneys and our attorney had a brief discussion about it and how they felt in regards to there being the conflict of interest. I would like for complete legal guidance on if she can have the discussion side and she can't vote.
Megan, I looked at that on council, the Texas local government code, section 171, parentheses 3, states that a city official, like a city council member, who receives more than 10% of their annual income from an entity that the city is doing business with, should not vote on the matter. And it says it talks about receiving funds from a business entity, so it doesn't.
But can she discuss?
No,
And I have a question, Rod. I don't receive funds from Skyway Gardens. I am employed by Mayfair Management.
I understand, but they are the manager for Skyway Gardens, and they receive money for management from Skyway Gardens, so that money from Skyway Gardens flows through to your employer, and that's sort of splitting hairs. I mean, they say business entity, that's what the statute says.
Okay,
So,
and even if I don't vote, though, I can't even discuss.
no,
Does it say that in the law or it says I'm not allowed to vote?
it says should not, they should not participate.
Is that what the law says? I'm
Yes.
asking the law. Quote me the law.
Participate in discussion or participate in vote?
Oh, I don't wanna- Quote it to you specifically. Texas Municipal League has a thing called conflict of interest in disclosure laws applicable to city officials.
Yep, I get that.
And
I don't think there's any question about voting. It's the question of discussion.
Chapter 171 prohibits a local public official from voting on or participating in a matter involving a business entity or real property in which the official has a substantial interest.
So I heard voting and participating, and I understand that. I got it. Okay. Thank you.
And then they go on to define what that means, and what that means, one of the definitions is you get more than 10% of your annual income.
I'm not worried
from a
about-
business entity.
That's not what I'm talking about, the participation side. Okay,
And so it says a public official who has such an interest, getting more than 10% of your money from a business entity, is required to file before a vote or decision on any matter involving the business entity,
Yep.
A document with the city secretary stating the nature and extent of the interest.
Yep.
In addition, a public official is required to abstain from further participation in the matter,
that's, you answered my question.
except when a majority of the members, except when everybody has a
Yeah,
conflict.
I understand. You answered the question. Thank you.
Okay.
So I think to me, it's pretty clear.
That's all I asked. I'm good.
Okay, all right, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Rene Ruiz, I'm an attorney for the Skyway Gardens developer here to talk about our matter. And we looked at this particular statute, and I would agree, he quoted it correctly. It does generally require to disclose and abstain if the elected official has a substantial interest in a business entity that has a matter before the council. And so the issue becomes, as she stated, she's not an employee of Skyway Gardens, and she receives money indirectly. So Skyway Gardens hired her employer Mayfair, is that correctly, to an arm's length negotiation to manage the apartments. Had no hand in her being employed by Mayfair or assigned to the apartments. And so there's a case directly on point that talks about when a local official receives money from a business entity that has a matter before the council indirectly. And that's what this is. It's an indirect flow of money through Mayfair to the local elected official. And the court said that it can apply in those circumstances, but the test is to look at whether Skyway Gardens had played a role in Mayfair hiring her or assigning her to our apartments. And we did not. And so what the case law says is that in that instance, the statute doesn't apply to her.
Okay.
But I would,
Does Mayfair get paid by Skyway Gardens?
yes, Skyway Gardens pays Mayfair to manage and operate the apartments.
So the money that Mayfair receives that is subsequently paid to the council comes from Skyway Gardens.
I will concede that she indirectly receives money through Mayfair from money that's paid from Skyway Gardens to Mayfair. But again, a court has addressed this specific issue. And when it comes to indirect compensation, it says that the test is that you look at whether the business entity that has the matter before the council played a role in any part in Mayfair selecting her to be the employee, which we did not. Now,
Okay.
I would still say that
I just wanted to say that it is pretty typical in cities for council members to abstain to avoid the appearance of impropriety. And it's oftentimes required by the city's ethics policy, which to be honest, we lack. But I do want to note that Councilor Rodriguez signed an affidavit today that basically said upon filing of the affidavit with my office, she affirms that she'll abstain from any discussion, vote, or decision involving the business entity or real property. So I think we can clear this up.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that she has the, at her choice to avoid the appearance of impropriety. Anyone can do it at any time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay,
I only mentioned that because I wanted to bring it up because it has been an item of interest, and that the public understands where we're coming from with Council Rodriguez. So now that it's all been discussed. This item has been on the agenda and it's a few times. So the first time we presented this at the last meeting, there was some discussion with a lot of the redlining. We were providing the copy that was originally provided. And then, of course, the copy that had come back from Skyway Gardens with some considerations for compromise, amending, however you'd like to word it. So this process started in February of this year. We've had some setbacks with not meeting our own deadlines. Upon the last meeting and the discussion, and both parties could not agree on moving forward with the developers agreement. We did table it to the next meeting, at which time the mayor, myself, Gio, Rod Ponton, and several of Skyway Gardens, Renee included, Roy, I don't know if we're on there, Alex, all participated in a group discussion on how we could work together to get this resolved amicably, and together. The city does not deny we need the housing. It's been a huge topic of discussion. As part of the back and forth between attorneys and participants, I did make the comment that I would like the developers agreement to reflect our ordinances. Ultimately, we should be following our ordinances. There's really no in, ands, or but about it. They are in place for these specific reasons. I did ask Rod to go ahead and redo the developers agreement to include the actual ordinance references. He did provide that feedback, and we did provide a copy to Skyway Gardens that reflected the updates with reference to the ordinances, and he also included copies of the ordinances specifically to those items. The only item that we have not received, or that I have not, is the service agreement. We just included the original service agreement that was presented the first time. Skyway Gardens did come back on Friday with their suggested amendments and changes, which we did include in the packet so that we could have this discussion. Ultimately, my main concern is that we, one, follow our ordinances. If we have specifics in place, I think it's important. Two, I do appreciate that Skyway Garden is addressing the drainage. I do know that there has been lots of discussion as to why the water is going that direction, how it's been going that direction. I do believe there's a, the little creek that was built by the
So it's a channel way.
Thank
Take the water under the culvert, which is on the south side of Bam Auto. That is, was put in by the county many years ago. And part of that culvert area was not added to the state side to go to the road. And as the silt has come through, rather than go down through the culvert area to go to Moss Creek, the water makes a left turn, heads around Bam Auto and goes around. I did talk with Don at TxDOT, who replaced Chris Weber. They have a work order in to go clean that area out and push dirt up and add caliche if need be. So that culvert, that dam runs all the way from where it is at Bam Auto to the road. So the water will go down towards Moss Creek. That ought to take care of that flooding area for that culvert.
okay.
Army Corps of Engineers.
I was gonna say, that's who we were told, and getting a hold of someone to respond has been next to impossible.
Well, so I'll go through that as well, because I talked to Frenchie at the county level. Frenchie said that the county built that to the Army Corps of Engineers standards. The Corps did not build it. Okay, that area is still fine. It's the state property that where the barbed wire fences, and Dan took me out there. We walked that whole area where the barbed wire fences, that's county property. there is in full compliance to the core requirements. It's the state area that is not. That's why I went and worked it with Don, and he got the work order in, and they're literally gonna dig it out to take the silt out and fill in that never got filled in originally. So it's a text dot issue.
Then I would definitely reach out to Armando Ramirez, who is the new permanent engineer for city of, for TxDOT.
So
Don is no longer there.
when did Don leave?
A week ago, week and a half.
I
ago?
just met with Don.
Oh, because TxDOT gave me Armando Ramirez's, and then.
Okay, so I'll be able to take the action of going close.
Would you let me know who is, because
I
I've
will.
got a couple issues too. Whole different, like the light pole on the Tagia.
It's Don Deitch, but I'll go see Don tomorrow. I was just with him, when did I come see you, man? Friday, yeah, and as of Friday, he was in the role, and he is actually was in San Antonio over the weekend with his wife, more story than we want to go through. But he's looking forward to his wife coming here, so I will talk to Don tomorrow, and I'll connect you, Don, and me in that discussion.
Yeah, because I know when I called TxDOT, they told me the new individual was Armando.
Who text dot?
TxDOT, the office here.
No, I know, who at text dot? Anyway, we'll work it tomorrow. Got it. But that ought to take care of the drainage issue, because he said, yep, that's the problem. That's why it's flooding.
So we are at where we're at now to discuss their recommendations and where we're at. My only concern is to follow the ordinances. And I do appreciate, like I said, them putting in the possible of the drainage, because those additional little drainage ponds would help their property too, to make sure not everything comes through. Would be great if the state stepped up as well.
So
Yes,
what ordinances aren't they meeting?
It's not a matter of not meeting the ordinances. The developer agreement would outline all of the ordinances in which they need to follow. So they haven't not met anything. This is just the step one as part of the annexation process, is if we annex you, the developer's agreement basically outlines everything that the developer is responsible for. I'm only asking that what they're responsible for is in compliance with our ordinance.
And I'll put into that proposed development agreement references to the ordinances. So that it's clear, each sentence is footnoted so that it can be referred to, so that it's clear where that request comes from in our ordinances.
So we're gonna go through them item by item.
Yes, we do need to go through them item by item.
Yep.
Because we need to be able to make any necessary changes tonight. And I do understand that it is getting late. But this is important because we have already sent out the notices to move into the second reading. If we don't make any changes and agreements tonight to move into that second reading, we have to start the whole process over again. And I do believe they have a time frame for this project.
Should we go ahead and vote to extend beyond 9 p.m.?
Y'all can.
I'll make the motion to extend beyond 9 p.m. if necessary.
I need a second. Any discussion? Vote, all in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, unanimous with Councilmember Rodriguez sustaining.
I would like to ask that the representatives from Skyway Gardens come up to the podium so that we can start this process. And that as we're moving through this, to allow Geo time to type in the notes so that we can update the current developers agreement. So that at the next meeting, it's a clean copy.
So the development agreement is exhibit B, correct? I have questions about exhibit A, but I'll hold off on those till we get past exhibit B.
Let's do B first.
Yep.
We're doing B first?
Yes.
And are we gonna look at their recommended changes?
I think it would be best to go with their recommended changes, because they clearly outline the red lines and stuff like that. I think it comes up blue if you're on the digital.
Blue line.
Your digital is blue, but that way you can see what they've added and subtracted, and you're not having to pull them both.
Yep.
If you have a digital copy of
You're at
it's at page 77.
Yep.
down or down.
Blue line.
I'm right
You're
here.
still in exhibit B.
I thought that's what we were doing was B.
We are.
But you're on page 77, which includes the blue lines. Or blue recommended you.
Seven.
I don't
Oh,
see
I'm
any
on
blue.
73. Oh, here. Now I have
There you
blue.
go.
I see the
Okay.
blue.
Okay,
Yay.
It may be in your packet as red.
it's blue.
Blue. We're in the blue.
Renee Ruiz, attorney for Skyway Gardens Development. With me today is Roy Lopez, representative of Skyway Gardens Limited, and Alex Venezuela, our engineer on the project.
We're all old friends. and kids.
Yes, from phase one. So I think I would agree with Councilman Stevens that the issues are roads, water, sewer, and drainage. And so we can just go through it quickly. Do you all have, so you do have our comments to what Rod sent us at the end of section one. It says, as stated in the 2019 development agreement. Okay.
Yes.
Do y'all have a copy of the 2019 development agreement? Have y'all seen it?
That was not provided.
May I hand that out?
Yes, you may.
Why not? Yeah,
We need it.
Move.
We need it.
So here's the development agreement.
2019.
That's the 2000, this is from the phase one.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'll get that. The applicable language is in develop, section 4. No, I did not. I think I went around it. So,
Highlighter in your hand.
I think I'm right.
this is to try to address the roads issue, okay? This is our development agreement from. I do have an extra one.
May not be able to participate, but it would be for something for her to read.
This is the development agreement from phase one, and it's where the deal was struck on the roads, and I highlighted the sections. It's in section 4. It says the road improvements will be built to city standards, which does not include curbs, gutters, or drains, and may consist of pulverized base and chip seal. That's what we agreed to in phase one for Lechuguilla Road. And the problem that what we did on the phase 2 develop, I'm sorry, yes, Council.
No. I'm reading with you.
So, okay, so that was the deal for phase 1. That's what we said that we were going to do. And then when we look at the section 1 on the new development agreement for phase 2, all we did, what the city attorney has done is that developer will complete all provisions that remain outstanding in that 2019 development agreement to include completion of the road improvement therein described to meet city standards as stated in the 2019 development agreement. We just wanted to make clear that our agreement is that it will be built to city standards, which does not include curbs, gutters, or drains, and may consist of pulverized base and chip seal. We're just sticking.
I just want to verify the March 20th, 2019 date. Should it not be the date of September 20th, 2019?
Let's see, when do we make this thing effective? Well, we can fix that, yes. City manager signed on September 20, Skyway on September 19. Do we have an effective date in here? Yes, we can fix that. But the point I wanted to make is that's what we agreed to do on the road. And that's what we think should be passed through on the previous agreement here on phase 2 development agreement.
So Megan, change the date. We're good.
Yes, I'm agreeing with the statement except for the date, if you're okay with the dates.
Yes, we would agree to that.
And I do want to add that that is the issue that we've had with paving, with doing the 30-foot paving the lane for the phase 1, in that we've got language and even in the demand letter that Rod sent us, it says we have to build that road to city standards. Well, no, we don't. We have a development agreement that says we're going to do a 30-foot paved lane with no sidewalks, no curbs, and no drains. City standards would require drains and sidewalks and all that, but that's not what we agreed to. That's why we haven't paved that lane, because we're at odds on, we don't agree with Rod telling us, you've got to put drains, you got to put sidewalks, curb and gutter to city standards. That's the issue with paving the 30-foot lane. We'll do it at any time you want us to, but we only do it a 30-foot lane, paved lane, and that's it. No drains, no sidewalks.
What's it go to?
The end of the property.
It's gonna go from 118.
Yeah, from 118 to the very
east
far end,
side of
to the very far end of our property.
Sounds like we're done on that one.
Yeah, it sounds like a moot point because that's what we have here.
Right.
Yeah,
And
and
then
so
the
the
other
sooner we
issue-
can get on that paving.
Well, the other issue that we got stuck on with Rod on that is that
Yeah.
we, you you know, we have the 30-foot right of way from our property line to the center lane of Lake Chagia. And at one time Rod asked as well, can you do that 30-foot lane in the center of the road? I said, sure we can, but we don't own the right of way on the other side of the center lane, so you'd have to get approval from the other owners. And that's never come about. So that's where we're stuck on doing that 30-foot. Pardon me?
I understand this wrong?
A 30-foot lane. That's a 60-foot road, right?
So
We're doing
instead of going from their,
All the way
The
across,
right into
it's
the
only
right
gonna go
way.
so far?
we're
Actually,
going,
if you walk it, you get about 30 feet out of it.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not gonna get a 60-foot lane across there. Then you're going off into the ditch on one side and the ditch on the other side.
So the whole thing,
Maybe easement or something.
the whole thing is gravel right now. will
Supposed
be
to be
paved.
paved.
It
It
will.
works as a 30-foot.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
That's where we're stuck on that.
Okay.
We'll do that 30-foot on the center lane, but we don't control the easement on the other side. So you'd have to get approvals from the other owners on the other side of Lake Chagia to let us pave on their right of way.
So do you need, has that road been surveyed?
Pardon?
Has that road been surveyed? Do you know where the
Not
site,
everywhere.
where it is? Because I've walked it multiple times.
We,
It's 30 feet wide.
yeah, we had, at one time we did have a blue top where we had a nail on the center line of the road from our property, so we can do that again and show you where the center line is.
I would work with any of that, make sure you're lined up and then
Right,
turn them loose.
so that's where we are with paving that 30-foot lane.
You need any more out of us on that?
You'll have to drive and show me. 'Cause-
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
That's what- okay.
Judy,
You need to go on cross country, you know.
Dan will take you out there.
I know, I have, don't worry.
you'll go out there with me.
But then I had to drive on a dirt road.
We would
Get
need
to
direction
him.
from the city on where to do that 30-foot lane.
Yep.
Because again, we're gonna do it in the center. We're gonna be paving right of way that does not belong to us. So we do need some direction.
Take Eddie out there.
okay. When do you need the direction?
Or 30, yeah, okay, yeah.
When do you need the
Or we just
direction?
Do our 30 on our side. We just do the 30 on our side that butts to our property, all the way from our property to Highway 118, won't be on the center.
The 30?
Rick saying it goes the whole way.
It's 30 feet, it's 30 feet, yeah.
Is it the, you know, the road right now is gravel. Is it that whole gravel?
I'll pace it on.
And
It's
y'all
30
thought
feet.
this was gonna go quickly, didn't you?
I don't know where the property line is. That's why I asked about where the survey markers are.
Got it.
But
Is
you're
it-
not gonna get much wider than 30 feet.
Okay, because the
Yeah.
gravel
My road in
road's
front of my
perfect.
house ain't no 30 feet.
I know, that was ours.
Renee, For the service, or the property markers that are out there for Skyway Gardens 2, the same property line as 1?
Yeah.
Because there are markers out there.
Yes.
So it's a straight shot, it's not like,
The easiest way to explain it is when the person that originally owned all that property, when they started off selling the property, they did it like this. This is the big lot and they subdivided the property like that. And then they said, okay, this guy here is going to give 30 feet as an easement and this guy over here is going to give 30 feet as an easement. So you have a 60-foot wide easement.
Yeah.
We own the fee under our portion, subject to the easement, and these people own the fee under the other 30-foot. So we're prepared per our agreement to pave our 30-foot from 118 all the way to the east side of the phase 1 development. But if you're going to want us to put it in the middle, now we're getting over onto the fee of somebody else's property. All we would need is their consent to pave it. But we don't want to do that because we don't own it.
Sounds like a field trip.
So I
I
think,
think that's awesome.
but we're fully prepared to do what we said we would do, which is pave what we own, the 30. Okay?
Well, I think it's wonderful. Yeah, that's good.
And the problem pops up again. You're gonna see this problem pop up again in the municipal service annexation agreement. And you see it in section 6 again, that talks about roads. In addition to the roads provisions contained in the previous agreement described in section 1 above, the developer will complete the city standards, all roads, streets, and alleyways within development to include adequate drainage thereof. We're not gonna have any roads within our development. It's gonna be a parking lot, just like phase 1. But we wanted to make clear that that language wasn't somehow changing the deal with respect to what we said in phase 1, that we're gonna pave what we own 30 foot. And if we acquire from Mr. Nye, Van Nye, we'll get his 30 foot That's part of the easement and we'll pave that. So I just wanted to knock out number 6. That's the explanation for number 6. That's why we put that language in there, because we're sticking to our deal.
For record purposes, I'm still gonna go in order,
Okay.
just so that he's documenting it, so that we can ensure that.
Well,
we get-
okay, I'll go through it again. No comments on section 2.
No.
On section 3, I can tell you unequivocally, we will follow the ordinances. Some of the language here is a little concerning though, because, for example, no problem building an off-site water line from our property boundary to the existing main that's on Lichigia. No problem doing that. We'll build it to city standards. We'll convey it over to the city. The city will own and maintain it thereafter. That's just what we did on phase 1. Same thing. But so we don't interpret that as meaning that we're going to do anything more than build an extension from our property boundary line over to the city's existing water main and tie into it. If there's fees to tie into it, we're going to do that. We'll build it to city standards. You can inspect it, approve it. Once it's been approved, we convey it at no cost over the city. And now you've expanded your sewer system to include that extension. Okay. Okay. Then we, in the same section on water. Yes, sir.
It talks about a pump station, you replaced it with booster pumps.
Right.
You
So,
replaced backflow prevention with valves. That's a no-brainer.
right.
What's the specifics about pump station versus booster pumps?
Okay. What I just finished talking about was the off-site water system,
Okay.
not on our development. We're going to extend an off-site water line over to the existing water main. Now you're talking about the on-site system, what's
Yeah.
on our property. We
Okay.
will unequivocally build everything that's necessary on site to serve our development,
Gotcha.
just like we did with phase 1.
So if you need to put the booster.
If we need to put the boost, but we had language in there that we couldn't commit ourselves to because we interpreted it as the city telling us, you have to put this and this and this, when that's what our engineer is telling us, we may not need it. So we just don't want to put ourselves in a box to build something that is not needed. But what we tried to do here was make it very clear and unequivocal that we will build everything on site required to serve the development, including any storage tanks, any booster pumps, any backflow prevention valves, which is our on-site water system. That's all we intended to do there. Because we think we know better what's going to be needed on our side of, in our property than perhaps others.
I think we're all at peace on that. Any questions? Nope, I'm just trying to help us click through.
Sewer is exactly the same. We're gonna have to build a sewer line off-site, off our property to city standards. We're gonna connect it to the existing sewer line, city sewer system on Lechugia. We're gonna build it to city standards. City's gonna inspect it, approve it. We're gonna convey it to the city at no cost, and you will own and maintain it going forward. And now you've expanded your sewer system. That's the off-site sewer system. When it comes to the on-site sewer system, same thing as the on-site water system. We will build everything that's required to serve our property, but we don't want to put ourselves in a box as to the city attorney telling us what we need to build, what our engineer is questioning that it may or may not be needed. So we wanted to make clear that we'll build everything we need on site, including any, to the extent it's required. What I'm trying to say there.
We're good.
Okay,
Gas, no comments.
Yep.
Roads,
just went through. Say it again.
gas, no comments.
Road, say it again.
Roads, section 6.
So Gio can write it down.
Okay, roads, section 6, first sentence. In addition to the roads provision contained in the previous agreement, that's what we've already talked about. The developer will complete to city standards all roads, streets, or alleys within the development to include adequate drainage thereof. We will not have any roads, streets, or alleys in our development. We will have parking lot, but because of this situation, where we do own half of the access, we wanted to make sure that that language was not somehow changing our agreement on what we said we would do with Lechugia. So that's why we put that language in there. If you want to leave the language in there about developer will complete city standards, all roads, streets, or alleys within the development to inadequate drainage thereof, we won't have any, so it's harmless to us. We think it ought to come out. We struck it first. What we were trying to do is little, violence to what we were provided, but we won't have any. So I think it ought to come out, to be clear, but you can leave it in because we won't have any. But we just want to make sure that that sentence wasn't designed to gotcha on Lechugia, because we own it. We own the fee. And it could be considered part of the development.
We're good.
Okay. Drainage, I think we made some real progress here. Thank you, Councilman, for taking the initiative. The last sentence in section 7 can come off. The developer and city agree to work together and make reasonable efforts to cause the Army Corps of Engineers to clean and remove all obstructions in the existing berm. That comes off because it sounds like you've got that handled, and it's not even the Army Corps of Engineers. Apparently, it's the county.
We all were. Or the state.
So I think that last sentence comes right out. Oh, well, first of all, let me go back to what was in there. The developer, in cooperation with the city, will develop a drainage plan acceptable to the city. The developer will construct any such drainage improvements necessary to inhibit street drainage, flooding. We struck that language because we perceived the flooding problem out there with Lechuguilla not to be coming from our development or from our phase 2 development. It's coming from the lands to the west and the problem with the berm in the back that's causing the water to come over. And we don't think that it would be fair or legal for the city to require the developer to build something that is not stemming from its development. And so we struck that, but what we said what we would do to try and alleviate the situation is we're going to build 2 ponds. With phase 1, which is already out there, we capture all our stormwater that's generated on our property in a stormwater pond that's on our property. It doesn't flow off our property. We capture it. It's engineered that way by our engineer. We're going to do the same thing with phase 2. Any stormwater, rainwater that comes onto our property, we're going to capture it and keep it on a pond, but we would agree to build a second pond, I assume if it's still necessary after the work that's done with the county, to capture the stormwater runoff that's coming from 118, lands west of 118, the mountain over there, little mountain. That's what's coming down along with the water that's flooding out of that berm south of Mr. Nye's place, Van Nye's place. And so we would be willing to do that. But we're just making clear that we think it will work except for in 100-year flood. Is that right? So the second pond I'm talking about, which is not even to serve our development, but to capture water that's coming from the west. We think it'll work in most cases, but it may not work every time. And so we just want to make clear that we're not promising that it's going to be a 100% solution, but that it should capture a significant amount of the runoff that's coming from lands to the west.
So I agree with the removal of the last sentence with the developer agrees to work with the Army Corps of Engineers. And I do appreciate the concept of the second pond. I'd like to keep that wording in there because it's a preventative measure.
Okay with that, Roy?
With what?
Leaving the second pond, the
We
2
need the
pond?
second pond language in there.
Does the first pond get full?
Well, the first pond is going to, yes.
Is that okay? for you?
Yeah, but I think the second pond is designed to capture the water that's coming onto our property from 118.
Right, not any of the development's water, only the water is coming off of right over from the culverts there, right there.
Okay.
But you're
But that
okay
should
with
get
keeping the
alleviated.
second pond? Right.
Yeah, no, we have no issue with, we already designed the deal with the second pond.
So that's the language you wanted, Megan? So we're okay?
Yeah, so just remove that last sentence with the developer and city agree to work together to make reasonable efforts to cause the Army Corps, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
And I'll include you in the discussion with Don or Armando, whoever it may be. Yeah, okay.
Maybe that's why he doesn't answer.
No comments on section 8? No comments on section 9?
No.
Section 10, we added, this is something that's very typical with developments like this. The city may, once we start a development project like this, we like to lock in all the ordinances that we have to comply with. It's called the vested rights statute. And it's really designed so that when a developer applies for his first permit, whatever ordinances are in effect at the time he applies for the first permit are the ordinances that apply for the life of the project. So if the city wanted to come and change an ordinance after we had already started, we're not shooting at a moving target and it's not going to apply to us. We're agreeing that chapter 245 says that when a developer applies for a permit, all of the development ordinances that apply there in effect at the time of that permit issuance are locked in for the life of the project. And so that they're not shooting at a moving target. We just want to be able to agree that this development is such a permit so that we know what we're aiming at when we sign this development agreement.
So you want to be grandfathered in?
Grandfathered or from any future changes. I'm not aware of any future changes that are coming, but we just don't want to have to change our plans if the city were to adopt, let's say, a new ordinance regard, I don't know. Something-
But it's reasonable. I think that's
Something
reasonable.
that doesn't change our development once we've kind of, locked in. on-
That's a reasonable request.
On number, we added number 11. We just want to make sure that if the city does annex the property, they go ahead and follow through and zone it properly for its proposed use. And I believe that's R3. Is that correct?
It is on.
Okay, so we just want to make sure that if you do annex this, the next step would be to zone the newly annexed property, and you would just agree to zone it R3 so that we're compliant, in compliance.
And Gio can follow up on the zoning question because he did reach out to Rod in regards to if we annex, and we automatically annex our. Yeah, R3.
R3.
And so that came back that yes, because we do have a planning and zoning process to that side of it. This would bypass that and go directly to her.
Which council to do for.
So that's it on the development agreement.
That's it. I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
I think after we fought it out and then we just reverted back to the ordinances, I think it kind of allowed for a cleaner.
Yes, it was just confusing the last time.
I agree with that, Megan.
I don't want to muddy the water, but some of the ordinance didn't seem to apply to us.
And you marked them up. I did.
Okay.
The plating subdivision, yes, no problem. We're going to subdivide it from Mr. Nye's property. We'll comply with the city's plating ordinance, no problem. The plumbing code and the backflow prevention and the inspections, no problem. Fire suppression, hydrants, pressure requirements, no problem. Main extension, sewer connection requirements, no problem. Utilities subdivision, no problem. But when we get to the 80 footnote 5 Alpine ordinance 86-4 prohibition of allowing accumulation of water. What that says is that it's illegal for a private property owner to discharge water onto a public sidewalk or road or any other public property. We're not doing that. We capture all our water on site on our ponds. The water I think that you guys are aiming at is the water that's coming over from the west and through leaking that's coming on to Lechuguilla from the west or from the berm behind Mr. Nye's place.
Now, where is that wording?
It's footnote 5.
It's at so it's page 78 at the very bottom under item 10. It says Alpine ordinance section 86.4 prohibition of allowing accumulation of water. And then Alpine, it's referenced twice, and then they marked off the Alpine ordinance, chapter 50, flood damage prevention. I am okay with it.
Okay.
Okay, and then
They made me read this weekend, guys.
Sorry.
and then so that's
Sorry.
the same thing on footnote 6. It's the same ordinance.
Yeah, it's referenced twice.
So that would come out. And then, we looked at 86.4 and I'm looking for my copies of that. 86.4. 86.4 is the prohibition of allowing accumulation of water.
You already got it covered under.
So that's footnote 5, 6, and 7.
Yep.
And then footnote number 8 is chapter 50. And we read that, and the engineer agrees with me that this is the floodplain ordinance. We're not in a floodplain. We don't find it applicable to us. It's the FEMA map. For land that FEMA has designated as being prone to floods, you need to comply with this ordinance, but our property is not in a flood zone. It hasn't been designated on a FEMA map as being in any one of the categories that are described in this ordinance. Again, you can leave it in there, but it's not us. I mean, it talks about all these different categories of flooding that this ordinance applies to, and you're given a designation. I'm looking for some of them now. I don't remember the specific designations, but the FEMA map will designate certain area as, A130, and it means it floods during certain periods, or AO, or, only during a 100-year period, but that's not our property. We wouldn't be able to build on it if it was in a floodplain. So we don't think that this particular ordinance applies. You can leave it in there. It doesn't apply. But we'd like to clean it up and just don't want to have a problem with the city to come back later on and say, well, but that's the floodplain ordinance.
Okay.
Yes.
And so I think that was it on the all of the footnotes.
Okay, so can we go to exhibit A?
Yes.
What is that?
That's not yours.
The service plan.
Okay.
So I have two comments or two questions on it. One is the date. On page. Scrolling back up. Yeah,
Page 64.
yeah, page 64, it says May 16th, we bought update that today. First
Well,
time,
Clarification, would you want this updated for the next?
whatever,
meeting for approval?
whatever you think it ought to be, I just thought May 16th didn't work, that was all.
So yeah, we'll make sure to change that for the June 20th.
Fine, okay. Then the other question I had was on effective term under Exhibit A. Says this agreement should be in effect for 10-year period commencing the date of the annexation. Why do we have an effective term if this is being annexed in as part of the city? Why does it run out for 10 years?
That's a good question. Where do you see this?
So this would be on page 67, Exhibit A, as part of the ordinance. Says this agreement should be in effect for a 10-year period commencing on the effective date of annexation unless otherwise stated in this plan. Renewal of this agreement shall be at the option of the city. And I'm thinking, why do we want to go through the whole annexation and then decide 10 years from now whether we want to renew it?
So the service agreement is everything we're gonna provide.
But it's going to expire in 10 years?
Well, I guess if we don't put it in 10 years.
Well, it says we can renew it, so if it is 10 years and at 10 years, we wash our hands, done or not.
I actually didn't even take into consideration.
I believe it's a statutory requirement, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah, it's sort of boilerplate that this gets added
I think that's right.
as a routine matter.
Okay, so we have 10 years to get it done, and if we don't get it done, we can say we're done.
They de-annex it.
Well, that goes back to the end,
Then it would give it the rights to de-annex it.
okay, which we don't want to go through.
But I
But
think,
we're providing all these services.
Okay,
There's no reason for us.
we're gonna keep that, that's true, we want water and sewer and all that stuff.
And it's already.
You answered my question, I'll withdraw my comment, that helps.
Now, I do want clarification on the service agreement. For those of you who have it digitally, it started on page 63.
Yes,
There are no markups on this.
right, that's what
Yeah,
someone I got.
that's correct, but essentially, we didn't receive an updated copy, so we used the original, so.
Okay.
and we weren't provided a copy of the municipal
It's the
service
same one that
agreement.
we provided
Right.
you initially.
And we had some minor comments that I think we'd be willing for the sake of expediting this. It's really a lawyer, it's my fault. If we say, city will do this, and then the next section says city is going to do this, just make it all will. So I would say that these are non-substantive.
Well, no, but I think there's language in there
But,
that
yeah.
referred to Skyway will do this, and
Yeah.
like you said, Megan, this is the services you, the city are gonna provide, not
So-
Skyway, so there's references in
The
there
drainage.
originally that says, for wastewaters, Skyway Gardens will construct and will provide retail water. There's references to Skyway Gardens providing this, drainage. Skyway Gardens will develop a drainage plan acceptable to city and construct any such drainage improvements necessary to inhibit street flooding on Lechiguilla.
Page 65.
Okay, so-
Again, there's things like that that are in there that we marked off, that we
Then-
said, this is not our agreement, it's what the city's providing.
So we will need to go through this kind of step by step, so that we can make sure it's clear, so we can have a clean copy for approval at the next meeting. Those of you who are digital, it starts on page 64. I don't see there being any issues.
Should we try and tackle that now?
That's what we're doing now.
Okay.
But I'm looking at
Have some
you.
Copies? Okay,
No.
these are red lines, these are the comments that we provided to the municipal service agreement that I don't think any of y'all have seen.
It was included in the last packet. the originals.
I think we can run this through this.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Let me make sure I have one.
Megan, originally when they were discussing it, was there any issues? Was there gonna be a study on, was it water or sewer that was gonna affect people further east of there?
So we've already, the study's already been started. They're in where they run the model. They put all the data in, gotten all the information. So now they're running to see how it would affect the city long term. Despite what happens, council approved to move forward with this project, knowing that we may have an expense on the city side to improve the pressure down.
So I'll run through it real quick.
So what's that?
Oh.
You know, again, disregard the comments on number 3. That's my nitpicking. We're fine with the language.
You think that's okay? Because it doesn't say we'll provide it. It says we have services.
Well,
If we're gonna do this.
I'd like to,
Let's do one line, or the first page, there seems to be no comments, questions, or concerns.
right, just look at number 1. The City of Alpine Police Department will provide police protection. Fire, Alpine VFD will provide. So I just said, when you get to EMS, City of Alpine will provide emergency medical
So
services.
this is where I do have an issue because we are not required to provide EMS services.
Okay,
We have a contract in place that we work interlocally to provide the service, but we are not required to actually provide that service.
okay. And will that service, if we get annexed, cover us?
Yes.
So then I guess we can strike the first sentence and go just back to the original. The City of
Go back to the
Alpine
original.
currently has a contract with Elite. And leave it like that. So strike my changes. Sounds good. Building services. Again, I'm not, we'll forego the comments on number 4 unless you want to talk about them.
I think it was just a matter of.
It's-
It's the same.
Right,
So
I think I agree.
We'll just leave it.
Okay. Planning and zoning, same thing. It was just some cleanup work, but non-substantive in my mind. We can leave it or you can look at the changes.
We'll just leave it.
Same with solid waste collection, number 6, non-substantive. Just trying to clean it up. Move on.
Yeah.
Number 7, water and wastewater. This is the one that Roy was talking about, where the second, it says water and wastewater services will be provided by the city to the annexed area. That's great. Skyway Gardens will construct all water and sewer infrastructure within the development to city standards. We struck that because we believe that's covered in our development agreement. And as Roy said, our interpretation of the municipal service agreement is cities required to adopt that to tell the people in the annexed area the services they will provide. So this isn't really the place for imposing something on us. It's in the development agreement, but we did cover that in the development agreement. We did said that we will, build all infrastructure required to serve the development inside the development.
So is that being amended at all?
Yes,
There's a-
if council is okay with it, his recommendation to remove the Skyway Gardens portion and just leave it. As the city will provide retail water and sewer infrastructure or water wastewater.
Section 8, natural gas services will be provided by the city to the annexed area. Perfect. Second sentence, Skyway Gardens will construct all gas infrastructure within the development to city standards. We covered that in the development agreement. So I struck that. You can strike that last sentence. I just said simplest thing to do would just say city will provide, yeah. Whatever you want to do there, except to delete the Skyway Gardens will construct, because we covered that in the development agreement. Move on. Number 9, same issue.
Oh.
I agree with the removal of the Skyway Gardens.
11,
Because it is addressed in the developer's agreement. So this is just saying they're gonna take care of it through that contract and we'll keep maintaining it through this.
Okay.
Is that the roads and streets or the gas you're talking?
Rosen.
Okay, so we can move on.
11,
We'll strike that last sentence in 9. No comments in number 10. Drainage. Skyway Gardens will develop a drainage plan acceptable to the city and construct any such drainage improvements necessary.
We agree on number 9. Striking the last sentence.
Yes.
And so, yes, back on number 11, we have said what we would do in the development agreement concerning drainage. And on number 11, we revised it to say the city will develop a drainage plan to inhibit street flooding on Lechugia Street. I want to point something out there. There's no time requirement on that. We wanted to give the city maximum flexibility on that to address it's a bigger problem, I believe. I don't know if the work that's going to be done on the berm behind Mr. Nye's place is going to resolve everything, and the second pond that we build is going to resolve everything, but there may be a need to develop an overall drainage plan for the area. That is beyond the scope of our project.
Well, I agree with your changes only because as we've discussed in our strategic plan, one of the things we need road improvements, structure. We just brought it up at the last meeting. Do we need drainage? Do we need curbs? Do we need to? So I think this would be a benefit just to the city for us to move forward with that type of project, but not just Lechugia Road. This is saying we're gonna take care of it. We've all recognized we need to do it for the cities.
So you're good with the language on 11?
Yes.
Thank you for that, Megan. No comments on 12, 13, 14. Now we're moving into the capital improvements program, okay? And y'all are familiar with the capital improvements program to fund new infrastructure in the city to serve new development. Police, no comments there. Fire, no capital improvements are necessary at this time to provide services. We'd like to put a period there. Skyway Gardens will install fire hydrants within the development. Within our development agreement, we said we'll install everything on site, including any fire hydrants, booster pumps,
Okay.
backflow prevention. We covered that. So we are striking the last part of that, section 2 on fire. Okay. No
And
comp,
Just a little background on the fire hydrants, the reason why it was concerned, because of the location and the structure of having all those houses in developments. There has to be some type of access within the property to be able to put out a fire if there is. So I'm good with removing that skyway, because you're gonna take care of it on site. Yeah.
on site through the development agreement. No comments on the EMS. No comments on solid waste collection. No new water, 5, no new capital improvements by the city will be required to provide water service to the area. If additional water line development becomes necessary, the city and developer will jointly plan such improvements. We struck that. We think all that ought to say is that no new capital improvements by the city are required to provide retail water service. We've already said in the development agreement, when it comes to the offsite water system, we'll build the offsite extension to connect to the existing water line, then we'll convey that to the city, and we will build everything on site that's required to serve our development.
So we don't know, but we're good with the language they wrote.
Correct.
Okay, same for number 6.
Same, it's the same issue with number 6.
Okay. Next.
7, that's non-substantive cleanup language on natural gas.
Good.
Roads and street, it goes back to the same core issue we started with about the phase 1 development on the road obligation. No new road or street related capital improvements are required at this time, period. Other than excluding the road improvements identified in that certain development agreement and Skyway Gardens dated September 20,
You get
2019.
the date right on this one.
Yeah. That's what I wrote.
So yes, that is correct. Agree with that?
Lighting, non-substantive changes.
There are no capital improvements.
Drainage, the city shall endeavor. That's endeavor. It's not what we're asking the city to do along in the drainage plan is after, when the city does develop a bigger overall comprehensive drainage plan, you'll look at putting it into your capital improvements plan to fund it. But that's endeavor. That's not a hard commitment. That's not a timeline stuck to it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Next.
Parks and playgrounds, that's non-substantive changes. Just some cleanup language. It's my
Is that-
nitpicking.
12,
Same non-substantive cleanup language,
13.
same.
You good? She's good with 13. Okay, force majeure.
I would like an understanding of why you want that removed.
Force majeure, I've honestly never seen that before. I've seen force majeure provisions, and what that says is that when two parties contract to obligate themselves to do something, and you have a force majeure provision in there, like COVID, for example, you can be excused from performance of your obligation under the contract in the event of a force majeure, which the definition is all correct about how that works. I've just never seen it used in the context of municipal services. If the city is telling a group, we're going to annex you and we're going to provide these services, and then something should happen, I would want to know, I guess, is this citywide or is this just going to be applied to us? In terms of, well, there's a force majeure, so we're not going to give you police service or solid waste service, but we're going to give it to everybody else in the city.
Rod, correct me if I'm wrong. Was this put in because we had included the original Skyway responsibilities?
It was,
So then we don't need it.
no, we can get rid of it.
Okay.
You're saying it was in the 2019 agreement?
No. So the original service agreement, we had gone back and put in Skyway's responsibility, and then in further research and talking with other building officials and city managers, it was kind of gave me the better idea. This is what we're gonna do, and the developers agreement is what they're gonna do. And so when we did the service agreement, we included part of what Skyway would be responsible for. So we won't need this because
Okay,
this is what we're responsible for.
okay, good deal. All right, next.
This is the level of services. I think this is typical language. Whenever a city annexes a new territory, they're supposed to try to give them the same level of services that they give within the city, unless there are circumstances that are, geographics changes or something that distinguishes it from why the service level would be different. For example, police response time, you may be able to get to one part of the city and take some longer to get out to ours. And so, but generally the services are supposed to be level throughout the city. This is kind of cleanup language. The section is just, that's non-substantive, just putting clarification there. And then what it originally said here is nothing in this agreement shall require the city to provide a uniform level of full municipal services to the area of the city. And I'm not sure what the law says on that. So how I covered us was just says except as otherwise required by law. I don't know.
Definitely in agreement with that after our recent legislation.
There you go.
Yeah, and all the changes.
And then the remedy, they're not substantive changes. Municipality, I changed the city because we use city throughout everything else. And I get hung up on stuff like that. And that's it, this.
Yes.
I think the next action then, given this discussion we've had, is I would like to amend the original motion to take into account all of the edits we have just discussed and the recommended changes in exhibits A and exhibits B as documented by the city secretary.
Okay. I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion regarding that? Okay, let's vote. All in favor for the amendment, raise your right hand. Okay, so 4 council members, Councilmember Rodriguez abstaining. All right, and now we need to vote on the original motion as amended. Okay, all in favor, raise your right hand. Unanimous with Councilmember Rodriguez abstaining.
Wasn't there one last action item on that? On the agreements? Very end of that language.
No, city secretary?
I didn't see any other items that they have.
Approving the development agreement between the developer and the city.
That was all part of that.
Okay. Thank you for your
So
time.
we've now officially approved the first reading, so June 20th is the second reading. With all the amended,
With all the amendments.
if you want to have a representative here, it's as well.
Is that included exhibit A and B?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to action item number 2.
Hallelujah.
City manager.
Approve resolution 2023-06-01, a resolution amending appendix C, animal service fees, setting rates and fees for animal service within the city.
I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Need a second. Okay, discussion, city manager.
So I want to point out that there are 4 changes in the current fee structure. The first change is under cremation, increasing the amount from $5 for pets that are owned pets to $15. That's $15 to cremate. As well as another increase under medical, increasing the euthanization of small animals from $30 to $50. Under permits, the increase of relocation of permit to different address from 10 to 25. And then the final yearly renewal for kennel from 10 to 25. These were approved and recommended not only by the animal control department, but also by the advisory board.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, let's call the vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, action item number 3. Okay.
Approved special use permit 2023-06-01 for the purpose of allowing the applicant JPM Southeast LLBBA Uncle 6390 to obtain an alcohol license permit from the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission to operate a convenience store with alcohol sales. The property in question is located at 708 North 5th Street. The record property owner is WTG Fuels. The parcel ID number is 12925.
I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
Discussion, city manager.
So this property is the current uncle located right across the elementary school. I know that we did have public comments in regards to the location being close to a school. The current ordinance, the 109.33 does allow for cities or commissioners to enact or may pass a law requiring the 300-foot distance or 1,000-foot distance. The city of Alpine does not have that in place. So they wouldn't fall under the provision of being within the distance of a school or a private school. The facility has currently applied for it. There is no sales going on right now. This is the original uncle's. It just has been. So they have to reapply for it.
Okay, and there's nothing in the state law that says it has to be 300.
It says that the verbatim here, it says,
We can put it in, but it is not required unless we pass an ordinance.
so incorporated city or town may enact regulations that's applicable in the city or town prohibiting the sale of alcoholic beverages by a dealer whose place of business is within 300 feet of a church, public or private school, or public hospital. And we do not have that.
The only other requirement is also in state law. If the school district was to tell us they didn't want anything within 1,000 feet of a school, we would have to abide by that. They have not done that.
Okay. All right.
There are also exemptions to this.
Yeah,
So
there are, yes,
the
yes.
sales could,
Less than 50% of alcohol sales, then we'd be exempt from that requirement
Yeah, and they probably would fall under that.
because they're gas station.
Any
And
other?
I think these just also call to the fact that we do need an updated alcohol ordinance of some sort.
Okay, yes.
That's something we should look into.
Okay.
Let's see what state law allows us to do also.
Well, previously we would just, technically I could approve this myself because we don't have an ordinance against it. But the reason that we moved to special use permit is to provide a mechanism to get the feedback and to, have an approval process.
Would you make a note that sometime in the future, after the budget, we want to revisit this?
Yes.
Someday? Okay,
Absolutely.
all right, so that way we don't forget and it doesn't fall through the cracks. Any other discussion? Okay, let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. Okay, city manager?
approve special use permit 2023-06-02 for the purpose of allowing the applicant GPM Southeast LLC DBA Uncles 6410 to obtain an alcohol license permit for the Texas Alcoholic Beverage Commission to operate a convenience store with alcohol sales. The property in question is located at 2705 East Highway 90. The record property owner is WTG Fuels Inc. The parcel ID number is 13376.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Discussion, city manager?
So this is the same type of application as the prior one. This facility is located at the big truck stop at the end of town.
Any other discussion? Let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. Okay, city manager?
Approve the fiscal year 2023-2024 administrative cost agreement for the Far West Texas Water Plan.
I need a motion. A second. Discussion, city manager?
The city of Alpine has participated in the Rio Grande Council of Government Subdivision West Texas Water Planning Group since about 2005. They've recently updated how they apply their administrative costs, which was provided in the backup documentation. You'll notice that the city portion is $445. This is where I had spoken before in regards to how we had the water planning study and they added another feature to it. This is that. And so it's just our portion to help move this group forward.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. Okay, city manager?
Approve memorandum of understanding with Stephen F. Daughtery to initiate discussion with TCQ in regards to possible use of Daughtery Well 1.
I need a motion.
I'll make one.
Second.
Second.
Okay, city manager, discussion?
This item has been up for discussion actually since June of 2022. And when we reached out to the public for voluntary water reduction due to our drought contingency plan. We've been working through this process for some time. We needed step one to even be able to go to TCQ to see if we can move forward with the project.
Any other discussion?
So have we looked at other wells? Because I've been approached by a number of people who say they got wells that do 300 gallons per minute. And I don't know the details behind the Dougherty discussion because I've not been part of council.
So Mr. Daugherty actually approached the city, and this is a well that had already been in our system. The reason why we were trying to move forward with this was the emergency side, but when there was the consideration to actually have a full-term, long-term agreement in place, we wanted to move forward with it, or I wanted to move forward with it, and speaking with the prior utility director and several of the employees. We have not looked at other wells. We are looking more specifically for that area. In speaking with TCQ, Keith and Caitlin at the time, provided an understanding and explanation with them that this is one that had already been in our system. And so this isn't an irrigation well that was solely irrigation. This was an actual public drinking water well, and that's where we wanted to start discussing. If anyone else is interested.
I'll send you the data. Okay, so, and we are not approving it, we're just opening the door for negotiations.
This is basically allowing me and the city to go to TCQ and say, hey,
Okay.
can we do anything?
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
But what it boils down to, Counselor, is that the TCQ requires the city to show that they're gonna,
I understand.
okay.
I got the deal. Yep.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's vote. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. Okay, so this brings us to item number 11, executive session pursuant to chapter 551.
Recall that I wanted to tender my resignation to the city as the city attorney. It's been my privilege to serve you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cotton. Okay,
I do ask that we go into executive.
okay. All right, so this brings us to item number 11, executive session pursuant.
10.
Pardon?
Comments, city comments.
City council comments.
Oh, my gosh.
I know, it's one of those nights.
It is. Okay.
The
Councilwoman
only comment I had was I was so glad there was no city staff update to make us go any longer. And you know, I'm glad I worked for my daddy all those years. My dad was an attorney. Because I kind of understood. Not all of it. I'm not saying I understood all of it, but I kind of understood.
I want to mention that Megan would like to do the city staff updates and keep us informed because that's her job. But I have asked her to hold off on them until the agenda isn't quite so full. Okay, Councilmember Rodriguez. Okay. All right, and I think I've spoken enough too. I appreciate everybody who came here. Okay, so this brings us to item number 11. This is
We going
So
to discuss employment.
Yeah,
I can make a motion to accept this and just get it over with.
if
We
you'd
go
like to
home.
make a motion to remove it out of executive session.
Okay,
I will make a motion to move it out of.
I'll second.
okay. Any,
I'd like to make a motion to accept this.
okay, any discussion? Okay, let's vote on going into it.
I don't know what we're accepting.
We're accepting the motion.
We're moving it out of executive.
So that we could talk about it.
That's fine. Okay, I'm sorry, that was the motion. Gotcha.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right. Discussion, any discussion? All right, let's vote. All in favor, raise your right hand.
Can we not, what are we doing?
So
We're
just-
going out of executive so we can discuss this. Okay,
Yeah, you have the same question I did.
I want to move what?
okay,
Megan told me to do.
okay. All in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, it passes unanimously. We are going to move this item out of executive session.
Gotcha.
Okay. So city manager?
So pursuant to Texas Government Code 55-1.04, deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, city attorney Rod Pond. So there, so I'm reading the action item, guys.
Okay, so I need a motion.
So moved.
I need a second.
And can I just confirm what that motion be to accept? the
I will
resignation?
move to accept his resignation. I'm not gonna move to dismiss it.
Okay, so
We can amend the motion.
We're gonna,
Okay, let's amend the motion
To accept the resignation.
to accept the resignation. I need a second to accept the resignation.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion.
Like to discuss what's the next option.
So that's why I wanted this kept into place. The reason why this was put on the agenda in February, we did ask for some considerations and then we were gonna do a 90-day evaluation. This is the 90-day evaluation. You guys have on the motion to accept his resignation, he has formally submitted his resignation. So there's no discussion in regards to the 90-day evaluation. I would have an item on the agenda recommending, going out for another law firm. I don't think that we should do it local because we are a small town. I have thought of, and we've discussed it in December of 21, when we did ask for Bojorquez Law Firm to assist us in a conflict of interest. They are highly recommended and they
That's
are.
not the TML people. Remember how we talked about TML also?
It's not, so TML can't be our attorneys.
But they can recommend.
And they recommend.
Okay.
So they are one of the top TNL recommended law firms. They are one of the biggest law firms. They do have people that may be able to come and actually attend meetings. We can do it by Zoom. I think there's some compromise. They would have a tiered structure to their billing. I would like to reach out to them so that next meeting I can have more information of how we could possibly move forward with another city attorney, specifically a law firm, to allow more input at the next one. But I wanted you guys to be aware that if this had happened, or if whatever council had moved forward with and decided that we can't sit dead in the water without an attorney.
Including the Rutledge ordinance earlier, I needed someone to write.
Sure.
So we still have
So
several
what
big
do we have pending right now that we could just say, well, we have,
AEP ordinance. Rutledge ordinance. Or not Rutledge, I shouldn't say, well, Rutledge ordinance
Yes.
and the abandonment vacate sale ordinance.
Skyway Garden.
Yeah, Skyway, yeah. Well,
Skyway Garden.
we just-
Oh, one, yeah, Geo updates that, it's all right.
Yes, then it's
Yeah.
up for.
and I mean, can we, like the Rutledge, I mean, we kind of know which way we're gonna go, so he kind of knows what we're gonna do. Is that something that made, I mean, can we right now just deal with what we absolutely have to deal with?
Well, these are all absolutes. I mean, we can't, I mean, the AP is our franchise fees, what they pay us. to
So how,
utilize our
no, but I meant like
right-of-ways.
Rutledge, can we wait on that and not take that off to somebody that,
We currently have a contract with Bojorquez Law Firm.
okay, so we,
So
we can use
I've
them.
already given me permission to use them for
Okay.
conflicts of interest and things like that. So I
Okay.
can move forward with using them. For minor items until we have a level.
So those items you mentioned, we could use them for.
Yes.
Okay.
I will request that Mr. Cotton does send us all of the correspondence and documentation.
can we ask him to return everything within the next, what would be fair? 7 days?
7-10. And
Is that too long to get what he has, since we're gonna be using some of that to go forward, or? I mean, it could be less. I don't see what would be the issue of getting.
I mean,
to
ideally, I think
times.
he should bring everything over tomorrow.
Okay.
I mean, he resigned, I mean,
So you'll take action to that, council must need to take action. They said he submitted the resignation.
but we will need the correspondence because he's been working with the AEP. I actually have more information on the lawsuit against the city with Mr. O'Gee. TML does keep me updated on that.
So you're gonna take action near term to use an existing contract that council's authorized for.
Up until June 20th and hope that council will have a well understanding of everything that can be provided. If council doesn't approve it and we want to go out and look for more attorneys, that's perfectly fine. But I definitely want to not sit dead in the water. I want to be able to.
So you're gonna bring something to us for the June 20th meeting, so we can take action.
Correct.
Okay.
That works.
Any other discussion? Councilmember Sinclair, Nance?
Oh, one quick one. So Mr. Putnam always worked with the municipal court. Does Bojorquez do that as well? Or was that just more status update?
So the court does provide an update. He is the prosecutor for the court. which means tomorrow's court will be canceled. We won't have a prosecutor.
Does Borquez do that?
I will have to inquire with them. I don't know what all services they have. I just know that we've used them and they've been highly recommended a lot of people.
Okay. Any Councilmember Rodriguez? No. Councilmember Stokes, okay. All right. So we move to adjourn.
No,
We have to
gotta take a vote.
Get out of.
Oh, okay. All right, all in
Thank you,
favor?
Motion.
Yeah, raise your right hand. All right, passes unanimously. Now, let's adjourn.
There you go.
Yes, thank you. My expiration is 8:30. After 3 hours of this. Yeah, forget it.